Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation begins with a man getting hit by a truck-kun. The doctors did everything in their power, but he ended up dying. He believes that he has come to the end of his miserable life. Suddenly, he opens his eyes to see a woman and a man smiling at him. Their language is totally different from the Japanese language. He assumes that he is in a European country. He touches his own face and finds out that he is a baby, and he has just been given birth to. The two people in front of him are his parents. His parents' names are Paul and Zenith Greyrat. They are in their mid-20s. He looks somewhat proud because he was 34 years old when he died. He is older than his parents, he says. The name given to him by his parents is Rudius Greyrat, and without a doubt, he just got reincarnated to another location. His parents call him Rudy for short. As time goes on, Rudy starts crawling around the house while also making trouble for the maid Lilia. He has gotten a grip on language too, and he now understands it. One day, he stands by the window and sees his father training with a sword. It then dawns on him that he is not in Europe. He is in another world entirely. Rudy is so surprised that he trips and falls. His mother rushes over to check on him. She then uses healing magic to heal his pains. Rudy finally gets the full picture that he has been reincarnated into a world of sorcery and swords. As Rudy gets older, his curiosity increases also. He wanders into one of the rooms in the house and he finds 5 books. These are the only books in the house. He starts reading about magic and incantations. The 2 ways to activate magic are magic circles and incantations. Incantation is the most popular of the 2. Rudy tries creating a water ball, but he manages to create a droplet. This doesn't stop Rudy as he continues to practice day in and day out. He is even able to create droplets without the use of incantations. All he needs to do is focus his mind, and he is able to create the water droplets. One day, Rudy finally gets the hang of it. He is able to make the water droplet fly. The spell simply goes, creates, set size, set firing speed, and activates. He picks up one of the books and starts reading the incantation in the book. He is able to create a water ball so powerful that it destroys the window, and it is also visible to everyone outside. Paul and Zenith rush into the room to check on Rudy. Zenith finds out that her son is finally able to practice magic. His parents decide that it is time for them to hire a tutor for Rudy. Paul wants them to hire a swordsman, but Zenith tells him that it is not yet time for that. Soon afterward, they find a tutor for Rudy. Her name is Roxy. Rudy is surprised when Roxy arrives. She is still a young girl. Roxy is also surprised that she will be tutoring a kid. She believes that Rudy's parents are already exaggerating their son's capabilities. She takes Rudy to the yard and tells him that training starts immediately. There are only 3 types of magic: attack magic, healing magic, and summoning magic. Each is divided into certain ranks. These are beginner, intermediate, advanced, saint, king, emperor, and divine being. Roxy says some incantations and tells Rudy to pay attention. She makes a water ball that cuts through one of the trees in the garden. She then heals the tree back, and Rudy is shocked that Roxy can use healing magic also. When it is Rudy's turn to create a water ball, he informs Roxy that he doesn't necessarily need incantations. Roxy is surprised by this, and she comments that Rudy might actually be worth training after all. Rudy creates a water ball that cuts down the same tree again. The tree is a tree that Zenith raised from the ground up. Roxy gets the blame for it. That night, they organize a feast to welcome Roxy to their home. Rudy realizes that he has just been given another chance at life. This is a do-over for him. Rudy is practicing his earth magic skills when he remembers the way he was treated in his past life. He was treated like garbage, and this made him weary of people. However, this feels like a new beginning. The trauma from his past is there and hasn't left him though. It is now 6 months since Roxy has arrived, and Rudy has been training hard since then. Roxy is a good teacher, and her classes have been fun for Rudy. Rudy can now even practice intermediate attack magic without any problem. One night, Rudy asks Roxy if there are spirits and demons in this world, and she says yes. In fact, Roxy is a demon. This is the reason she has purple hair. There are particular demon races known as Super. They are very dangerous, and they are hated by both humans and demons alike. They have committed crimes against humans and even their own race. There was a particular war that happened between humans and demons some centuries ago. The Supers committed a lot of heinous crimes during this period. Rudy doesn't pay much attention to the story because he sees it as a good story used to scare kids just like on Earth. Soon afterward, Rudy starts sword training with his father. He doesn't have the strength like his father just yet, so he is still poor in this aspect. One day, Rudy sees two boys playing outside the fence. His fear of people shows right there. He hides behind the fence because he is scared that they will bully him. Roxy finds Rudy behind the fence. She points to the distance and tells him that there is a country in the far north called Rano. They have a magic academy in Rano, and it will be great if Rudy can attend the academy one day. Rudy now sees Roxy as his master. He has developed a lot of respect for her. It is now a year and a half since Roxy started training Rudy. The country has a culture of celebrating birthdays at the ages of 5, 10, and 15. Rudy is now 5 years old and a feast is held for him. His father gives him a sword. Rudy cannot wield the sword just yet, but he will keep it. Her mother gives him a magic book for his birthday. Roxy gives Rudy a magic wand in celebration of his 5th birthday. That night, Roxy reveals that she will be holding Rudy's graduation exam the next day. The following day, Roxy prepares a horse for the two of them. The exam will take place far from the village. Rudy is very scared to leave the compound. Apparently, he hasn't even left the compound since he was born. He is scared of people because of what he faced in his past life. He is reluctant to get on the horse, but Roxy finds a way to convince him. They ride out of the compound and Rudy realizes for the first time that the village people are actually very peaceful and nice people. He is finally able to conquer the trauma in him. The duo gets to a plain field and Roxy says they have arrived at the perfect spot. The spell she wants to cast can harm people, and this is the reason she needed to get away from the village. The spell is a saint-level magic. She begins to say the incantations and the sky turns black. Lightning strikes and the horse almost gets killed. After she is done, she tells Rudy to give it a try while she protects the horse. Roxy creates a protective barrier around herself and the horse. Rudy follows in Roxy's footsteps, but his own spell is more powerful and the sky looks darker. There are splashes of rainfall everywhere. When he is done, Roxy says he has passed his final exam. He even overdid it, and this was expected. Rudy is now a saint-level water magic. Later that evening, Roxy prepares to leave. Rudy and his parents don't want her to leave. The family starts crying and they beg Roxy to stay, but she tells them that she wants to travel the world and hone her skills. Rudy is happy that he was able to learn a lot from Roxy. He is also happy that Roxy helped him to conquer his long-term trauma. Before leaving, Roxy gives Rudy a pendant to wear. As Roxy moves farther away from the village, Rudy shouts at the top of his lungs and thanks her for everything she did for him. Soon afterward, Rudy gets more comfortable leaving the compound. His parents are even surprised at the sudden change in his lifestyle. His father lectures him about kindness. He wants him to always be kind to everyone around him. Rudy is taking a walk when he sees 3 guys, Somer and his friends, bullying an innocent kid. He jumps in and punches one of the bullies and chases them off. Rudy goes over to the kid and finds out that the kid is of the same age group as him. He just assumes that the kid is a boy and he starts addressing him as one. He takes off the boy's hood so he can wash the dirt off his body. Rudy finds out that the boy is a superd. However, he does not look dangerous. He also has long ears, and the boy reveals that he is half-elf. His family situation is complicated, and that is the reason he is wandering around. Rudy says his father has taught him to help the weak, and that is the reason he is helping the boy. Rudy then formally introduces himself to the new friend he just made. The boy also tells Rudy his name. It turns out that the boy's name is Sylph. Sylph has never made any friends in the past, so he doesn't even know what friends do together. Rudy suggests that they practice incantations, and Sylph is up for it. He even looks excited when he hears this. The duo plays together till it is late, and Rudy returns home. That night, Rudy gets back home to find his father upset. Paul says he is angry because Rudy punched Somer. Rudy tries to explain things to his father, but Paul is not ready to listen. All he cares about is how Rudy will apologize. Rudy refuses and says he cannot apologize. Paul gets angry and hits his son. Rudy stands up and tells his father that he will not help the weak next time. He will even join the bad men to do evil. It then dawns on Paul that Rudy must have a good reason to have done what he did. Paul apologizes and he finally asks his son what happened. That night, Paul tells his wife that he had a fight with Rudy. Zenith calms him down and tells him to find a way to talk to his son. Paul is also worried that he didn't get to properly apologize to his son. Summer is here. Rudy and Sylph have gotten closer than before. For the past 6 months, Sylph has been practicing his magic skills Rudy. He has improved considerably over that time. Rudy even tries to teach him how to do magic without incantations. He gets a hang of it, but he is not perfect yet. Rudy is very happy to have found someone of his age to play with and also get along with. Later that night, Rudy takes Self to his home because it is raining. Their clothes are already wet, so Rudy suggests that they take a bath. Rudy takes off his clothes and asks Self to do the same. He wants them to bathe together so they won't catch a cold. Self is reluctant to take off his clothes. Rudy believes that Self is just shy and he drags his clothes off. Rudy receives the shock of his life when he realizes that Self is a girl all along. Self falls down crying and Paul enters the room to ask what the problem is. Later on, Paul asks his son why he did what he did. He explains that he had no idea that Sylphiet is a girl. She has short hair, so he just assumed. It turns out that Sylph's full name is Sylphiet. Paul tells his son to apologize to Sylphiet when he sees her. Rudy goes to the living room and tries apologizing to Sylphiet, but he just made matters worse. The next morning, Rudy is seen practicing with his father. His father realizes that Rudy is not putting in his best effort. He asks if Rudy has not settled with Sylphiet, and he says yes. Paul then gives his son a piece of advice on how to deal with women. You have to show them your vulnerable side, he says. Just then, Sylphiet shows up and Rudy runs over to meet her. Rudy pours out his and Sylphiet reveals that she is not angry at Rudy. She wants them to go back to the way they were before. Rudy is very happy to hear this, and the gloomy face he has been wearing disappeared immediately. Paul also joins the duo and he hugs them. Soon afterward, there is joy in the household because Zenith is pregnant. Rudy is happy that he will soon get a baby brother or baby sister. Implications surface that night when Lilia informs them that she is pregnant also. There is no doubt about it. Paul is the father of Lilia's child. Everyone at the table gets gloomy. Immediately, Lilia announces this. Lilia tells Zenith that she plans on leaving 1 month after she helps her to raise her baby. Zenith is devastated and doesn't know what to do or say. Rudy realizes that the situation is getting tense and decides to interfere. He points out that they are expecting 2 babies and they should be happy. He then decides to blame everything on his father so that Zenith will allow Lilia to stay. Rudy plans to make it up to his father later, but he doesn't want Lilia to leave. The journey will be dangerous for her and her child. Rudy manages to convince his mother to allow Lilia to stay. Later on, we see Lilia having an internal monologue with herself. It turns out that she was actually the one that seduced Paul. Hearing the couple moan every night has made her vulnerable. She wonders why Rudy decided to save her even though she has always been avoiding him. She decides that she would change her attitude toward Rudy from that moment on. She makes up her mind that her child will serve Rudy. Soon afterward, Lilia and Zenith give birth to 2 bouncing baby girls. Lilia's child is Aisha, while Zenith's child is Norn. It turns out to be a bit stressful because raising 2 kids together at the same time is very tedious. However, Lilia has changed towards Rudy, and she has started talking to him more often. During swordsmanship training, Paul makes mention of school. Rudy is supposed to have started school by now. However, Paul doesn't want him to go because he might just be bullied by the rich kids in the school. Later on, Rudy tells Sylphiet about his idea of going to school. She starts crying and begs Rudy not to leave her behind. She hugs Rudy tight while begging her. Rudy has no intentions of leaving her in the first place, so he gives Sylphiet the assurance that he is there for her. In the next scene, Paul tells Rudy that he has a letter. He opens the letter and discovers that it is from Roxy. It's been 2 years since she left. She is now in Chiron Kingdom, where she is tutoring the young prince. She has succeeded in mastering king-class water magic. She then advises Rudy to attend the Renault Magic University that she once talked about. Paul is impressed that Roxy has made it to king-level water magic. While the family is having a meal, Rudy asks his father for a favor. He wants him to pay for his tuition fees at the Magic University. However, he wants Sylphiet to follow him and his father will be the one to pay for her too. Paul then tells Rudy that he is not ready to let him go to the university now. There are reasons why he doesn't want him to go. Number 1 is Paul has not finished his swordsmanship training. Secondly, Rudy is still young, and Paul is not ready to abandon his parental responsibilities. The third reason is money. They can manage to pay for Rudy, but they might not be able to afford to pay for Sylphiet. Rudy then tells his father that he is ready to work to get Sylphiet's tuition fees. He tells his father to find a job for him. Whenever Paul decides that he can now leave, he would have been able to gather Sylphiet's tuition fee then. Paul agrees to his son's terms. The son and father are training in the yard when a beast person arrives in a carriage. Apparently, Paul knows her, and he calls her by her name, Ghislaine. It turns out that Paul is sending Rudy away with Ghislaine. To make sure that his son doesn't argue his way out, Paul fights him and knocks him out. Rudy wakes up to find himself inside Ghislaine's carriage. She tells Rudy that they will be working together starting tomorrow. Ghislaine gives Rudy a letter from his father. The details of the letter tell Rudy everything he needs to know. Paul has managed to get Rudy a job to tutor a 9-year-old noble girl in the city of Rho. Ghislaine will be Rudy's trainer and instructor, as she has been for years. Rudy is to stay over there for the next 5 years. He will teach reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic magic. Paul instructs Rudy not to send letters throughout his stay. He doesn't want him to contact Sylphiette or anyone else. Rudy realizes that Paul is trying to make sure that Sylphiette doesn't overdepend on him. She needs to do some things by herself. They soon arrive at Rho. Rudy meets the mayor, Philip. He is the father of the girl that Rudy will be tutoring. Philip is Paul's cousin. Rudy doesn't realize that they have noble status in their family. Philip is doubtful if Rudy will be able to tutor his daughter. His daughter is very stubborn and she is not ready to learn. He takes Rudy to his daughter's room. Rudy meets with Eris. Eris looks violent from the start. She is not even ready to accept Rudy as her mentor. She adds that she is older than Rudy. Rudy ends up getting beat up, and he only manages to escape with his life from the vicious girl. Philip asks Rudy if he is ready to give up on tutoring Eris, but he says no. Paul will make fun of him if he returns home without doing his job. Rudy needs to sit down and think of a plan to make Eris accept him as her master. He tells Philip his plan, but one of Philip's servants is there, and he listens in on the conversation. That night, Rudy goes to sleep and wakes up in a box. Rudy doesn't seem concerned because apparently this is his plan. However, the environment is dirty and he made mention of a clean place. He opens the other box beside him and finds Eris inside. He shows Eris how he burned off his binds with magic. If only Yoi could do that, he says. Just then, their captors enter the room and beat Eris up. Rudy believes that the men are just following his plan. He then uses healing magic to heal Eris's wounds. After the man leaves the room, Rudy suggests that they escape. He asks Eris if she would be quiet and obedient if he takes her with him. It is very hard for Eris, but she has no choice but to accept. They escape through the window side, and this is no secret from their captors. Immediately they get outside, Eris starts acting like herself again. She complies with Rudy once she realizes that the kidnappers are after them again. They find a carriage that will take them back to Rho. They soon arrive at Rho, and they run into Philip's servant, who had previously heard Rudy's plan. Just then, the kidnappers show up again and abduct Eris. It dawns on Rudy that the men have not been acting. They really meant to kidnap Eris, and the servant only took advantage of his plan. Rudy chases after the men. They offer him money, but he refuses. A fierce battle ensues between them. Rudy manages to knock out one of the men with his magic attacks. Eris is impressed at how strong Rudy is. The other enemy uses a sword-throwing technique for Rudy. He throws his sword at Rudy, and Rudy has no way of dodging the attack. Just then, Ghislaine arrives and saves Rudy. She kills the kidnapper too. Rudy would have been dead meat if Ghislaine had not shown up. The servant is captured, and he is taken back to the castle. They arrive at the castle, and it is very evident that Eris is suffering from yesterday's trauma. She would have been kidnapped and probably killed if not for Rudy. This doesn't mean that she has changed from her rude and arrogant attitude. She tells Rudy that she has accepted him as her tutor, and this makes Rudy happy. He just landed his first job. Rudy then asks why the kidnappers would make the decision to abduct him too. Philip tells him that the Grey Rat bloodline has its own influence, both physical and political. It is now best to make sure that no one else outside the castle finds out that Rudy is of the Grey Rat bloodline. While they are talking, Philip's wife, Hilda, enters the room, but she just ignores Rudy. Apparently, she doesn't like Rudy. Just then, Philip's father, Soros, enters the room also. With the way he talks and acts, he appears to be an intense man. Eris must have taken after her. Soros then asks Rudy to teach Eris magic. Rudy says he wants Eris to ask him by herself. With a thundering voice, Soros calls Eris into the room and instructs her to ask Rudy to teach her magic. In addition, Rudy will be teaching her how to read and write. This includes arithmetic also. A month after Rudy starts to teach Eris, Rudy realizes that she is more interested in learning magic than the rest. She runs away anytime Rudy wants to teach her basic things about education. One day, Ghislaine talks about how her illiteracy put her into trouble. This is the reason she has also decided to learn from Rudy. Eris hears this, and she gets more serious. She doesn't want to go through the intense suffering that Ghislaine went through. because she could not calculate money. In addition to the lessons Rudy is taking Eris, Ghislaine is also taking the duo on swordsmanship training. However, Eris is the better person when it comes to swords. She always beats Rudy to a pulp during their training session. Eris usually makes fun of Rudy because he is weak. Ghislaine sees Rudy as more of a mage than a swordsman. Eris continues to pay attention for the next couple of months until she starts behaving erratically one day. Rudy realizes that Eris has been learning without having a day off. He then suggests that they take a day off. Eris is very excited because of this. They decide to visit the city market. Rudy walks through the market and writes down the list of prices for comparison. He explains the need for this to Ghislaine and Eris. He says it is essential when it comes to buying and reselling. He also uses this opportunity to test Ghislaine and Eris's knowledge of arithmetic. Ghislaine has improved well when it comes to arithmetic, but Eris is still off. Rudy sees a book that he likes. He has no money to buy it. Eris offers to buy the book for him using her grandfather's money. Rudy refuses because Sora's money is not Eris's money. He tells Eris that she needs to earn her own money. He is ready to tell Philip to start giving his daughter an allowance of at least 1 silver piece a month. This makes Eris very happy. While they are returning home, Rudy looks into the sky and sees a flying fortress. This is the first time he is seeing this. Ghislaine explains that the flying fortress belongs to the armored dragon king, Perugius. He is one of the 3 heroes who defeated the demon lord Laplace. Rudy recalls that he has heard the story before. This is the bedtime story his father usually reads to him. Roxy has also told him this story once. It is rumored that Perugius is still alive and in the fortress. This creates excitement in Rudy, and he wishes to go to the flying fortress one day. Later on, Eris buys Rudy a vial that he wanted to buy but has no money to. She almost tears Rudy's head off when she finds out that the vial contains an aphrodisiac. As time goes on, Eris has improved greatly in her swordsmanship skills, while Rudy remains the same. One night, a servant, Edna, comes to Rudy's room to see him. She needs his help concerning something. Eris's 10th birthday is coming up, and she needs Rudy to give her some free time. Eris will have to perform that day. She has no idea how to dance at the moment and she needs to practice. Important people will be in attendance that day, so it is very crucial that Eris performs her dance steps very well. Rudy agrees to give Eris some free time for her dance lesson. In reality, Rudy's just happy that he will also get some free time to himself. Later on, Rudy visits the library and he decides that it is time he starts learning foreign languages. He wants to learn the beast people's language, the demons' language, and the battle people's language. Etna comes to see him again to inform him that Eris is not paying attention to her dance lessons. Rudy decides to find Eris and have a conversation with her. Rudy finds Eris where she is sulking. As usual, Eris punches Rudy in the head before she even sits down to hear what he has to say. Eris complains that she is bad at dancing and they are trying to force her to do it. Rudy then manages to convince her that hard work is the key. She only needs to dedicate herself to it, and she will get the hang of it. Eris digests what Rudy tells her and she agrees to go back to training. Rudy accompanies her to training so that they can practice together. As days go by, Rudy also continues with his study of foreign languages. He even sends a letter to Roxy. He also uses his earth magic to make a beautiful small statue of Roxy, which he sells. Later on, Rudy gets a response from Roxy. Rudy had explained that he needs help with the demon's language. Roxy manages to make a handwritten textbook for Rudy. This will help Rudy to get the hang of the language more. After training so hard, Eris finally knows the basics of dancing. Rudy was with her during all the time that she was practicing. Rudy is her dance partner, but he won't be her dance partner when she wants to perform. Anyone can just walk up to her and ask her for a dance. The following day is Eris's birthday and all the invitees are in attendance. It is time for Eris's dance. A noble boy walks up to her and asks for a dance. Everything was going well initially, but the boy fails to get Eris's rhythm and the dance fails. Everyone starts to murmur about Eris being bad when it comes to dancing. Rudy realizes that Eris is about to be embarrassed and he quickly steps in to dance with Eris. He tells her to dance just like the way they practiced. Eris reveals that she is nervous because her father and grandfather are in attendance. Rudy thinks of an idea. He tells Eris to close her eyes and follow his signals. By this, the duo is able to produce a dance that is so exceptional that leaves the crowd clapping for them. Philip is impressed with the way Rudy handled his daughter's situation. That night, Rudy gives Ghislaine and Eris a magic wand. Ghislaine then gives Eris a ring as her birthday gift. She says the ring is her family's heirloom and it stops evil wolves from attacking her when she sleeps at night. Later on, Rudy sees Soros after he just finished pleasuring him in the basement. After Soros is done, he sends the girl with him away and calls Rudy to check something with him. Rudy looks into the sky and he sees something spherical that looks like a planet in the distance. Rudy asks Soros what it is, but he has no idea either. Soros says it is better not to investigate it. It is now 2 years after Eris's birthday. She has now advanced in her sword skills. Eris is even able to stand toe-to-toe with Ghislaine. We then learn that there are 4 main families under the Grey Rat families. 2 of them are Boreas and Nodos. Rudy's father is from the Nodos family, while Philip is from the Boreas family. The head of the family is Paul's little brother, and it is rumored that there is a covert movement to replace him. Rudy is a Nodos, and he is under the Boreas' protection. He can't hold a big birthday party because this might draw unwanted attention. Rudy knows that Eris and the rest are planning a birthday party for him, but it is going to be a secret. He already knows this because he secretly heard the maids talking about this. The party will not be elaborate, but it will hold. Rudy is going to be 10 this year, so they don't want his birthday to go without it being special. On his birthday, Ghislaine makes sure to keep Rudy in his room so that all the preparations can be made. Moments later, Rudy is invited to the hall where he is officially greeted with happy birthday by everyone in the house. Rudy intentionally acts surprised, and he starts crying to make it look good. Rudy's family was invited, but they can't come because monsters have been acting up in their region, so they can't make it. Rudy is surprised when Hilda tells him to marry Eris. Hilda is dragged away from the hall before she makes any other trouble. For his birthday gift, Eris presents Rudy with a staff. He is a mage, so he should have a staff. The staff cost a fortune, and this makes Rudy appreciate the present more. Later that night, Philip reveals to Rudy that Eris has 2 brothers, but they are being raised in the capital. This is the reason Hilda was initially ignoring him. Her own sons are not in the house, but someone else's son is. Philip then asks Rudy if he is willing to help him take over the Boreas family. Rudy declines because he is not ready to be caught in a power struggle. Philip even offers Eris as a bride to him, but Rudy refuses. After this, Rudy retires to his room. He is surprised to find Eris there. Eris looks very appealing that night, and Rudy gets tempted to touch her. He was about to have his way, but Eris stopped him. She then tells Rudy that they can only have anything together when he is older. That will be in the next 5 years when he is 15 years of age. Rudy is very excited to hear this until he remembers Sylphiet. In the next scene, we can see Paul fighting off monsters. Sylphiet also gives Lilia a pendant to help her send to Rudy as his birthday gift. Sylphiet has been closer to the family since Rudy left. Paul gets home and complains about the number of monsters he is now facing. It has never been this bad, he says. Elsewhere, we see a silver-haired man walking with a dragon. By this, we can conclude that the unknown man is somewhat powerful. The unknown man realizes that a great amount of mana is gathering somewhere, and he needs to investigate it. This has caused the sky to change. It seems the silver-haired man is even taking instructions from someone more powerful than him. His boss tells him to find out why the mana is gathering. He is fearful that someone is trying to break the seal that is being used to hold the demon lord Laplace. We get to find out that the silver-haired man is called Almanfi. Meanwhile, Rudy, Ghislaine, and Eris are having a magic practice session when Almanfi arrives. Ghislaine goes head-to-head with Almanfi, but he is too powerful for her. He then reveals that he is under the order of Lord Perugius, and he has come to destroy the source of the disturbance they were feeling. Ghislaine manages to convince Almanfi that the trio is not a threat to him. He accepts and says Perugius will personally judge her later. Almanfi leaves, and suddenly an energy blast erupts from the sky. The blast comes toward the trio, but Ghislaine uses herself as a shield to protect Eris and Rudy. Rudy opens his eyes to see himself in his old body, and he is also in a foggy-like environment. An unknown figure in the shape of a man appears and tells Rudy that he is a divine being. He assures Rudy that he is on his side, and he is ready to support him. The divine being then tells Rudy that he was caught in a mana cataclysm, and he has been transported to the demon continent. He informs Rudy that the moment he wakes up, he will find a man beside him. He shouldn't be scared of the man. He should rely on the man, and they will help each other. Shortly afterward, Rudy opens his eyes to realize that he is now in his new body and everything is as the divine being is said. He sees Eris beside him, and when he looks to his front, he sees a super looking right at him. Rudy initially gets scared, but he summons courage and speaks to the demon man using the demon language. The Superd reveals that he and Eris fell from the sky. He knows that human children are frail, so he made a fire for them and decided to watch over them too. Rudy asks if he found a beast woman, but he says no. The Superd is surprised that Rudy is not scared of him. The duo introduces themselves, and we get to find out that the Superd's name is Rugerd. They are deep in the demon continent as of the moment, but Rugerd is willing to escort them back to the central continent. He says the Superd's reputation has been damaged beyond repair, but he doesn't care. He hasn't finished saying this when Eris wakes up and starts screaming at the sight of Rugerd. Rugerd doesn't take offense because this is a normal reaction for people when they see a Superd. Rudy manages to get Eris to calm down and explain things to her. She finally calms her nerves, and she is furious at the way people have painted the Superds as bad demons. The following morning, the trio starts on their adventure to return to the central continent. Rugerd takes care of any monster in their path. He reveals that the crystal in his forehead serves as a third eye for him. He gets to see enemies before they even get close to him. They soon arrive at a demon village where the Miger tribe resides. The guard initially refuses that he won't allow the human children to enter. Rugerd pressures him, and he is forced to call on the village chief. The chief, Raucus, arrives, and he is surprised that Rudy can converse in demon language. One of the people that followed the chief sees Rudy's pendant and asks where he got it. He reveals that his master gave it to him. He tells them that his master's name is Roxy. The man hears this and screams out that Roxy is his daughter and this is her hometown. They allow the trio into the village and they are taken care of. The village chief asks how they intend to get back home, and Rugerd says he will escort them. That night, Rugerd decides to tell Rudy the story behind the defamation of the Superd tribe. He says Laplace was responsible for what happened to them. During the war, Laplace showed his strength, and this made the Superd tribe decide to fight for him. He made new spears for the tribe and told them to discard the old ones. The spears were powerful, but unknown to them. They were cursed. Before they knew it, they started acting erratically. They killed foes and enemies alike. Even their own family members died at their hands. Rugerd's son managed to break his father's curse, but he died also. Rugerd has been alive since then, and he has vowed to clear the Superd's name. Rudy realizes that Rugerd has been alone for over 400 years now. Rudy then assures Rugerd that he will also help him wherever and whichever way he can. The following morning, Rudy meets Roxy's mother, Rokari, before leaving the village. They give Eris a sword, and she thanks them for their kindness. As they continue their journey, Eris is hyped, and she doesn't hold back when she kills monsters. They soon arrive at checkpoint, and the trio knows that they must not find out about Rugerd's identity. Rudy decides to dye Rugerd's hair from green to blue. Rugerd's nickname among the demons is Dead End. This means that anyone who comes across Rugerd always meets their end. They get past the checkpoint, and they make their way into the city of Rikarisu. The trio enters a guild, and they are relieved that no one recognizes Rugerd under his dyed hair. They decide to register their party as adventurers, and they name it Dead End 2. They will start at F rank, and they can only take menial jobs. Slaying monsters starts from C rank, and they can't do that just yet. One of the adventurers makes fun of the party and tells them to take the Find My Cat job. They find an inn to sleep for the night. They get inside the inn and they meet the Tokurabu Toughs. They are a party of 3 also. The party members are Gablin, Kurt, and Bachiru. The trio offers Rudy and his party an alliance, but Rudy politely refuses. They are not open for partnership, he says. They want to remain a party of 3. During the night, Rudy starts thinking of how the party will make money. He sleeps and finds himself in front of the Divine Being again. The Divine Being then advises him to take the Lost Cat job. He assures him that the task will pave the way for them. Rudy wakes up to see Eris standing by the window. She is worried that they might never make it home, but Rudy assures her that they will. He assures that everyone else at home is also okay. The following morning, they accept the task and they start to follow the trail of the missing cats. Rugerd makes use of his third eye to track down the cats. They soon make it to a cave and Rugerd tells them that the cats are inside. They get inside to find out that some cats and pets are locked in cages. 3 demons soon arrive and they appear to be the ones kidnapping the cats. Rudy and his party use their power to hold the culprits to the wall. Their leader starts to trash talk and Rugerd wastes no time in cutting his head off. This shocks everybody there. Rudy asks why he killed the culprit and Rugerd says the guy has done many bad things and he had it coming. Rudy then explains that he wasn't supposed to kill him. Even though he is a bad man, Rudyard shouldn't decide if he should die or not. Rudy comments on the fact that people will continue to be wary of the Superds if he acts ruthlessly. The other two, Jalil and Viscal, learn that Rudyard is a Superd and they almost die from fear. The duo confesses that they kidnapped the cats and pets. They wait for the owners to post that their pet is missing, and they pretend to have found it for the reward. The culprits are also adventurers and they are in the D rank. This means that they can take C rank jobs. The guild's rule is that you can take jobs that are not more than one rank above yours. Rudy decides that the duo will be spared and in turn, they will work for them. Rudyard initially disagrees, but Eris manages to convince him that Rudy knows the best. After this, Rudy tells the duo to take the C rank jobs and his own party will take the F rank jobs. They will then exchange jobs. Rudy and his party will complete the task and get the reward. Rudy also tells the duo to spread the name of their party far and wide. He warns them that they must make it good or they die. The duo are so scared that they are willing to follow all of Rudy's instructions. Back home, Paul has written a letter to Rudy. Apparently, Lilia, Aisha, and Zenith are missing. Norn is still in his care, but he is making his way to Zenith's homeland to inform them. He has also sent letters to all of the guilds that he knows, and he has begged them to help him look for his family. Meanwhile, Roxy has found out about this also. Now, in the Demon's Continent, Rudy and his party are on a job to investigate a mysterious monster in the petrified forest. The reward attached to the task is decent, so it is important that they are successful in the mission. However, they have no idea what the monster is. As they get deeper into the forest, they run into two other parties that are on the same job. The other two parties start running to find the monster because the mission just turned into a competition of first come, first served. Rudyard suggests that they follow the other parties and try to protect them. They are children and they don't know the risk they are pulling themselves into. The children soon run into a monster anaconda, and it turns out to be a difficult task for them. Rudy tells his party members not to engage but wait till the last minute. This will make the rescue more important and valuable to the kids. Things are getting out of hand, and Rudy instructs his party members to charge in. They attack the anaconda and save the kids, but one of the kids dies from the serpent's attack. Rudyard blames Rudy for this, but the kid's party member tells him to. He reveals that they are adventurers and they know that there are risks associated with their job. The kids appreciate Rudy's party for coming to save them. They escort the kids to a place where it is safe and they part ways. They soon hear screams and they run over to investigate. They find a red hood cobra wiping out the other party. Rudyard says the cobra should be the mysterious monster that they are looking for because it is rare to find one in these types of forests. Rudy asks if they can win, and Rudyard says yes. The cobra still has one of the adventurers in its mouth, and Rudy aims to save him. Rudy and his party members manage to defeat the serpent with the help of teamwork, but the adventurer didn't make it. They make their way back into town to find Jalil and Viscal, so that they can exchange loot. It turns out that an adventurer has found out about their little scheme and he wants to take advantage of the situation. He wants them to pay him money to keep his mouth shut. Rudy starts thinking of what to do. They can't have their licenses revoked because it will mean hell for them. Just then, Rudyard removes the dye on his head to reveal that he is the infamous Dead End. Everyone around gets scared and runs away. The adventurer demanding a bribe starts to shake. Rudyard grabs him by the neck and warns him that he will come for him if they get to the next town and find out their license has been revoked. He uses his blade to cut the adventurer's cheek to let him know how serious he is. Rudyard runs away from the scene after this. The kids that Rudy and his party saved witness this, and it is evident that they are scared. Rudy looks at them and demands to know why they are scared of Rudyard. "Didn't he just save you guys?" he asked. The kids realize that they are in the wrong, and they look disappointed in themselves. Later on, Rudy finds Rudyard where he is hiding. The duo have a heart-to-heart conversation, and Rudy thanks Rudyard for saving him from himself. He was ready to kill the adventurer right there, and Rudyard sensed this. This is why he did what he did. Rudyard knows that Rudy is ready to do anything to protect Eris. Rudyard assures Rudy that he will always be there to assist him and help him. Rudy says the same to Rudyard and the duo shake hands on it. After this, Rudyard shaves his hair and also hides his third eye under a pouch. This way, people will not recognize him and get scared of him. Rudy is happy with the party, and he reveals that their current target is to reach the Ashura Kingdom. The other two members second the motion and they begin their journey to Ashura Kingdom. Roxy is now acquainted with two of Paul's former adventurers' party members, Talhand and Linelice. They are to assist her in searching for Rudy and Paul's missing family. Up next, Rudy and his party are looking for a way off the demon continent. They want to go to the Mills continent, and to do this they will need to travel by ship. They get to the port, but they are met with disappointment when the captain tells them that they need 200 ogre coins as transportation fee. 200 ogre coins is too much, so the group just goes back to re-strategize and find a way to make money if there is. While sleeping that night, Rudy finds himself in the soul dimension where he usually meets with the pale guy who introduced himself to Rudy as a divine being. The pale guy tells Rudy that everything could have gone smoothly for him if he had just handed over the crooked adventurers to the authorities instead of recruiting them. He's been wandering for the past year because of this. The pale guy then tells him that he will find a hungry person. He should feed that person and he would be rewarded. The following day, Eris and Rudyard are busy training when Rudy takes a walk into the town. He soon finds a beggar that everyone is refusing to give him food or money. Rudy remembers the pale guy words and he offers the beggar the food he has with him. The beggar consumes the food hastily and takes off the clothes covering her head after she is satisfied. She introduces herself as Kishirika, the great emperor of the demon world. She is a small girl and Rudy believes that she is just trying to satisfy her imagination. Rudy decides to play along with her act, and he kneels down for her like a servant. She is very impressed by this, and she tells Rudy that she is willing to grant him something as a reward. She tells Rudy to make a wish. Rudy asked for money, but she is not capable of that. The demon emperor then decides to give Rudy something that she is capable of giving. Kishirika offers to give Rudy the power of the demon's eyes. She holds Rudy's head and pushes her hand into his right eye. After she is done, Rudy's affected eye changes color and he starts feeling weird. The eye she just gave him is the eye of foresight. She leaves after this and tells Rudy that he is free to call on her anytime he needs help. Rudy starts walking back home and he runs into a man because he is not feeling too well. Just then, he pushes the man out of the way. At that same moment, something falls from above that would have landed on the man. It turns out that the eye of foresight gives Rudy the power to see into the future. He gets home to tell his party members about his encounter. A week later, Rudy is already getting the hang of his new power. The amount of mana he focuses on in the eye changes how far into the future he can see. At the moment, he cannot see more than 2 seconds into the future. To test out his new ability, he has a sparring session with Eris at the beachside. He uses his power to calculate all of Eris's moves, and he manages to defeat her. Eris feels down because of this, and she just leaves for the inn to sleep. Because he has defeated Eris, he tries to fight Rudyard too, but he fails spectacularly. Upon getting home that night, Rudy realizes that Eris isn't happy about her defeat because she has been training hard. He was only able to defeat her because of his new ability. He remembers his promise to get Eris back home. He stands up from where he is lying down, picks up his staff, and leaves the room. Just then, Rudyard stops him and reveals that he knows his intentions. Rudy plans to sell the expensive magic staff that Eris made for him so that they can have the money for the ship fare. Rudyard tells him not to, and that he should trust his party. They will find a solution together. They just finished their discussion when the man that Rudy saved the others showed up. He introduces himself as Gallus Cleaner. In the next scene, we see Roxy and her new party members in an adventurer guild. It seems almost every adventurer knows who she is because she is an A-rank water mage. That night, Roxy has learned about Dead End, and she is aware that Dead End is a demon that is very ruthless and creates fear in anyone that comes in contact with him. She suspects that a party named after the Dead End must know something about him. The information going around is that Dead End is a party of 3. A red-haired swordswoman called Mad Dog Eris, Guard Dog Rudyard, and Kennel Master Rudyard. The following day, Roxy is passing by the beach when she sees Eris and Rudyard practicing. She hides behind a rock to watch them. She realizes that the duo is part of the Dead End party. She can't find Kennel Master there, however. Roxy gets scared when she finds out that Rudyard is a superd. She quickly runs away out of fear. She runs past Rudy, but the duo doesn't see each other. It turns out the events happened the day Rudy got his eye of foresight. After this, Roxy and her party leave the town to continue their search mission in another town. Up next, Gallus offers to smuggle Rudyard off the continent because of his status. Rudy and Eris will take the normal boat ride. As payment, Rudy and his party will help liberate certain smuggled goods once they reach Zantport. During the journey, Rudy and Eris get seasick constantly, but Rudy uses his power to try and heal Eris to prevent her from getting worse. Soon afterward, they arrive at the Millis continent. Once they are able to leave here, their next stop will be the Central Continent. Rudy sets Eris up in an inn and tells her that he has to go back for Rudyard. Rudy makes his way to the smuggler's den where Rudyard is being held. The smuggler's leader tells him that Rudyard has been tied down because he was trying to make trouble. Rudy walks through the basement and sees all the people being held by the kidnappers. There are Beastkin's children being held there, and there is also a huge white dog. Rudy is shown to where Rudyard is being held. Before Rudy unties him, Rudyard reveals that the kidnappers have killed one of the children. Rudyard wants to kill them and save the kids. Rudy has no objection to this. He cuts off his binds and Rudyard gets to work. He starts to wipe the kidnappers while Rudy finds the kids and sets them free. He speaks to them in beast people's language so that they can trust him. Shortly afterward, Rudyard arrives to tell Rudy that he has taken care of all the kidnappers he can find. They take the nearest exit out of the basement. Just then, the kids remind Rudy that the dog has not been set free. Rudy tells Rudyard to take care of the kids while he goes back for the dog. He enters the dog's cell and finds out that it is being held under a magical barrier. He destroys the barrier and frees the dog. The dog is happy and it jumps on Rudy. Rudy starts to fondle the dog. Suddenly, two beast people enter into the cell and they are surprised to see Rudy playing with the sacred beast. The older beast person appears to be a chief, and the other is his son, Guys. Guys knocks Rudy to the ground, and he finds it difficult to move his body. The duo assumes that Rudy is among the kidnappers, and they promise to deal with him without mercy. The chief tells Giles to return to the village with Rudy and the sacred beast. He will try to go after the kids and rescue them, he says. Rudy is trying to tell them that he is innocent, but Giles is not ready to listen. In the next scene, we get to find out that Rudy is being imprisoned in the beast people's village. The village is in the middle of the forest, and he has also been stripped of his clothes. No matter how much he tries to tell them that he is innocent, they keep pouring water on him. Rudy is calm because he knows that his party members will come for him anytime soon. It is now 3 days and no one has come for Rudy. He is now worried that something is wrong. Days later, another man is brought into the cell to join Rudy. The man is an exceptionally funny person, and he introduces himself as Geese. Rudy also tells Geese his own name, and Geese comments on the familiarity of the name. He says he has heard the name somewhere in the past. Geese is imprisoned because he was caught cheating during a gambling session. Surprisingly, the duo gets along easily. One night, the duo is still arguing in their cells when the village suddenly goes up in flames. The village is being attacked by bandits and kidnappers. Rudy breaks himself and Geese out of the cell. He picks up his things and decides to help the villagers. He and Geese start to attack the bandits. He uses his magic to take out the fire ravaging the village. Just then, Giles arrives to help. He is a seasoned warrior, so the bandits have no chance against him. He goes through them like they are nothing. Out of nowhere, Gallus shows up. It turns out that he is behind everything. He used Rudy as a decoy to draw out the beast people. He was able to know the location of the village due to this. The kids sell for high prices, and he intends to kidnap as many kids as he can. Gallus tells Rudy to join him. Giles goes after Gallus, but everyone is surprised when Gallus easily defeats Giles. It turns out that Gallus is an expert swordsman, and he makes use of a technique known as the North Style. He is a North Saint, Gallus the Cleaner. Rudy gets scared when he sees how powerful Gallus is. No one seems to be able to fight him among everyone present at the scene. Gallus starts to walk away when there is nobody to stop him. Just then, the sacred beast arrives and attacks Gallus. Rudy supports the beast, and he starts to throw magical attacks at Gallus. Rudy tries to use his Eye of Foresight against Gallus, but it doesn't seem to help. Gallus injures Rudy by throwing a knife into his thigh. He is about to eliminate Rudy when the sacred beast jumps at him and distracts him. Geese also helps by throwing his sword at Gallus. This gives Rudy the opportunity to conjure a powerful magical attack, which he then throws at Gallus to defeat him. Gallus is defeated, but Rudy is exhausted, and he passes out. Soon afterward, Rudy opens his eyes to see Rudyard and Eris. He is also surrounded by beast people who are happy to see him. The beast people apologize for not realizing that Rudy was innocent. Eris then reveals that they were not able to come for Rudy because they ran into the chief. They were able to explain things to each other. They started looking for other kidnapper dens to destroy. This is the reason that they were not able to look for him for the past week. Eris says she cannot wait to tell her grandfather about her adventures. Unknown to Eris, her grandfather has been accused of a crime and he has been executed. It is the rainy season. Rudy and his party members decide to stay in the village till the season is over before they continue their journey. As days go by, Eris and Guy's daughter, Minotona, gets closer. One night, Guy looks at Eris's finger and sees the ring Ghislaine gives her. He demands to know where she got it. Eris tells Giles that a beast woman named Ghislaine gave it to her. It then dawns on Rudy and Eris that Ghislaine is part of the Doldia tribe, which resides in the village. Guys believes that Ghislaine is dead, but he is surprised when he hears that she is still alive. He reveals that Ghislaine is a disgrace. She abandoned her duties. Guy's words hurt, and she starts to defend Ghislaine. She says Ghislaine is a very diligent person that has always been there for her. She was also her master. Rudy also joins Eris to tell Giles that Ghislaine is respected. She is now a different person from who they knew before. Giles is surprised by this. He never expected Ghislaine to become an admirable person. Later on, Minotona comes to meet Eris. She wants Eris to teach her how to use the sword just like Ghislaine taught her. Tona then reveals that Ghislaine is Guy's little sister. Minotona is now interested in who Ghislaine is, and she wants to be like her. Eris accepts to train Minotona. Guys and Rudy are watching Eris and Tona train together. Giles reveals that he has always been trying to get Minotona to train, but she has never answered him. He is surprised that Minotona is now interested because of Ghislaine. As days go by, Minotona continues to get better in her training. One day, Eris tells Minotona that she will soon leave because the rainy season is almost over. Minotona doesn't want Eris to leave, and this causes a dispute between the duo. Minotona wants Eris to stay forever. That night, Guys comes to see his daughter. He tells her to get things right with Eris before she leaves. She might later regret not talking to her. Minotona would not want to part ways with Eris when she knows that she might not see her again when she leaves. Shortly afterward, Minotona gets up and makes her way to Eris's room. She apologizes for being selfish and Eris forgives her. The duo spends the night together because Eris and her party will be leaving the next day. The following morning, Guys asks Eris to spar with him before leaving. He wants to see how much training Ghislaine has given her. The duo takes their stance and goes at each other just once. With this, the duo concludes their said spar. The chief sends the party off with thanks in his heart. They tell the party that they are free to come back anytime they want. Just as they leave, the geese run over and join them in the cart. He reveals that he was able to escape and he made a run for it. He says he is headed for the country of Milis also. This is where the party is heading to. They ride past a monument to the 7 great powers. Geese explains that it is rumored that the 7 are the strongest fighters in the world. Starting from number 1, the technique being, the dragon being, the battle being, the demon being, the death being, the sword being, and the north being. Rudyard reveals that he is not even up to the standards of the 7 beings. Rudy is worried that there are people that are even more skilled than Rudyard. However, no one has come across them in recent times. The group soon makes it to the outskirts of the capital of Nilis. Geese get down and part ways with the group. He tells Rudy to visit the Adventurers Guild when he is free. After settling down that night, Rudy tells Rudyard and Eris that they now have to keep their heads straight till they make it to the central continent. This would require that they take another ship. It is now a year and a half that they have been teleported to the Demon Continent, and they have finally made it to human territories. Rudy suggests that it would be great for them to send letters to their family members and to tell them that they are safe. Eris reveals that she and Rudyard will go out the next day to hunt goblins. Rudy is free to take the day off. The following day, Rudy is busy writing a letter to his father when he sees someone being taken away on a horse. He concludes that the person has been kidnapped because he is tied and his head is covered. He starts debating on whether to interfere or not. He finally decides to help the poor man. He follows the kidnapper and tracks him down to a house. He realizes that there are other men in the house also. He stays in the shadows until he sees a pair of women's underwear in a box. He couldn't hide his excitement, and this caused the men to discover that he was there. Rudy has no choice but to fight the men. However, he covers his face with the underwear and makes it act like a mask, while he also inhales the smell coming from it. He knocks out the kidnappers. He looks at the person that was kidnapped, and the person looks familiar to him. Just then, 2 adventurers enter the building and they start to fight Rudy. He keeps dodging the attacks thrown at him. Seconds later, a man who appears to be the leader of the adventurers enters. He is drunk, but he looks like someone very skilled. He draws his sword and comes after Rudy. Rudy tries to stop him, but everything he throws at him turns out to be futile. The leader gets close to him and cuts off the mask on Rudy's face to reveal his true identity. Just then, the leader drops his sword and calls Rudy by his name. Rudy looks up to find out that the person in front of him is his father. He looks different because of his beard. They make their way to the guild to discuss. Paul is happy to see his son, and he asks if he saw the letter he sent. Rudy says no, and he starts to narrate how he survived the demon continent and found himself where he is. Rudy makes the story interesting, and Paul stops him. Paul believes that Rudy has been having fun while things are going apart. To Paul, his son didn't have a hard time. The argument gets heated and the duo ends up hitting each other. Rudy says he has no idea about the things that have happened. Just then, Norn shows up and stops Rudy from hitting her father. Rudy tries to introduce himself to Norn because she's now grown, but she doesn't want to hear. All she could see was a bully hitting her father. Rudy stands up and he's about to walk out when Paul tells him that he wasn't the only one that was teleported. It was a teleportation disaster and all of the village was affected. Paul reveals that every member of the family is missing except Norn. He formed a rescue and search party to find his family. Rudy gets back to the inn and he looks miserable. Eris and Rudyard get back and are shocked to see Rudy looking all sad. Eris demands to know what happened. Rudy reveals that his father is in town and they had a fight. Eris gets mad that Paul hasn't seen his son for a long time. And he had the audacity to treat him like trash when he finally saw him. She is about to leave and find Paul, but Rudyard stops her. He tells her to comfort Rudy instead. He's closer to Rudy and tries to comfort him even though she doesn't know it works. Later on, Paul is sitting in the guild and he remembers how his family went missing, leaving him to be a drunk and depressed man. Just then, Geese enters the building to see Paul drinking himself to death. Turns out that Paul and Geese know each other. Geese scolds Paul for the way he treated Rudy. Paul says Rudy was having fun while the world was crumbling. Geese then tries to explain to Paul that Rudy did an impressive thing by surviving the demon continent. He says the demon continent is a very dangerous place, and Rudy should be praised for surviving. He is an 11-year-old kid, and he is already doing impressive kinds of stuff at his age. Geese is very sure that Paul could not do the things Rudy is already doing at his age. Geese continues further and says Rudy was even able to get a support as his bodyguard. The only reason he might have made his journey look fun is because he didn't want his father to worry about him. Paul is now a drunk person and he looks hopeless. Rudy must have seen that, and he didn't want to add more to what his father is facing. Geese advises Paul to make up with his son. This is the first time that you are seeing him in a long time, so it is worth celebrating. Geese berates Paul for not being thankful that his son is alive and healthy. Would you have been happy if he came back with some parts of his body missing? Geese leaves after pouring his heart out to Paul. That night, Paul is overwhelmed with guilt because of the way he treated his son. The following morning, Rudy and his party members are having breakfast in a cafe when Paul arrives. He has shaved off his beard, and he now looks more like himself. Eris wants to stop Paul from seeing Rudy, but Rudyard drags her outside. He wants them to leave the two alone so that they can have a heart-to-heart discussion. Paul sits down with his son and apologizes for his behavior. He then reveals that the towns and villages were affected by the disaster. Even Eris town was affected. There is a possibility that her family members have vanished also. Nonetheless, Paul intends to take Eris home as promised. He then plans to return and start searching for his mother, Lilia, and Aisha. Rudy looks into his father's eyes and makes him remember how he was when he was depressed in his past life. Paul is depressed, but he still pulled himself together to come and apologize to him. Rudy then tells his father to forget about yesterday's events. He tells his father to come closer. He jumps into his father's arms and hugs him tight. The duo hugs each other tight and Paul starts crying. The duo starts apologizing to each other, and it turns out to be an emotional moment. Father and son finally reunited, and it is a beautiful sight to see. After this, the duo goes to Rudy's room together. Eris arrives and she is surprised to see Paul. She is still angry because of the way he treated Rudy. Rudy then tells Eris that they have settled everything. Paul apologizes to Rudyard and Eris for making trouble for them. Rudy tells Eris what he learned from Paul. Eris tells Rudy that she is already prepared for the worst. Paul has given Rudy the money he needs for the ship fare. The following morning, Rudy and his party get ready to leave the city. Norn is formally introduced to her brother. Rudy tells his father to take care of himself and he leaves. After his departure, Geese arrives and Paul thanks him for his help. Paul is finally ready to get back on his mission of searching for his family. Up next, Eris gets seasick again while they are on their way to the central continent. Rudy is also affected, but he is still able to hold out his own. Rudyard is not even affected, and he wonders why Rudy and Eris get seasick every time. In the next scene, we see Roxy discussing with the adventurer Nokapara, who tried to collect bribes from Rudy and his party members in the past. It seems Roxy knows Nokapara, and Roxy is now on the demon continent. Nokapara says Roxy has changed from how he used to remember her. Roxy's reputation has blown through the roof, and people now expect a lot from her. Nokapara then talks about the dead-end party that stopped him from taking bribes 2 years ago. He didn't go into details, and he asks if Roxy has visited her parents. She says she hasn't and she might not. Roxy is wary of visiting her village again. She ran away because she couldn't use telepathy like the rest of her people. Her tribe is capable of using telepathy, and Roxy is an exception. Nokapara advises her to make up with her family before it is too late. Nokapara's words get to Roxy, and she decides to visit her village. She reaches the village's entrance, but she is very nervous to enter. She sees some kids playing, and it reminds her of her childhood. One of them gets injured, and she uses her magic to heal him. The children start staring at Roxy. She knows that they are trying to communicate with her telepathically, but she lacks the ability. She gets anxious and runs away. Roxy makes her way to her parents' house. Her parents were shocked when they saw Roxy. Her parents start acting all friendly, but Roxy doesn't seem interested. She tells her parents that she's about to start leaving. Her parents beg her to at least stay the night. Her mother asks when next she can see her. Roxy bluntly says she will come in the next 50 years. Her mother is just happy that she got to see her daughter. She starts sobbing uncontrollably. Roxy looks in the corner of the house and sees the toys she played with as a kid. Her parents still kept everything. She remembers how everything was when she was a kid. She was an outcast because she couldn't communicate telepathically. But her parents never cared about all of that. With all the memories rushing back, Roxy gets emotional, and she also starts crying. She hugs her mother, and her father joins them. Roxy apologizes for leaving without saying. Roxy wakes up the next morning to realize that she spent the night with her parents. Roxy then tells her parents that she is happy to see them, but she still needs to leave because she is searching for her apprentice. Just then, her parents tell her about Rudy and his party that visited 2 years ago. Her parents reveal that Rudy was traveling with a super. It then dawns on Roxy that Rudy is the third member of the dead-end party. After saying her goodbyes, Roxy leaves. Roxy is happy that Rudy is safe. She can now comfortably continue on her mission to find Paul's missing family since she knows that Rudy is safe. After this, Roxy and her party members head toward the northwest of the demon continent. She needs to check all the cities in the demon continent one by one to eliminate all possible places that Zenith and the rest might be. Up next, Rudy finds himself talking to the pale guy again. Rudy then tells the pale guy that he wants to know where his family members are. The pale guy then makes Rudy promise that he will start to trust him if he gives him a hint that will reunite him with his family. Rudy doesn't make the promise, but says he will try. The pale guy then shows Rudy a scene of how he will meet Aisha. He says Aisha and Lilia are being held in the Chiron Kingdom. The pale guy tells Rudy not to tell Aisha his real name when he finds her. He should use an alias and allow Aisha to explain her situation to him. The pale guy tells Rudy to write a letter and have it delivered to the royal palace. By doing this, he will be able to rescue both Lilia and Aisha. Rudy returns to his normal self after he gets this information. Soon afterward, Rudy and his party arrive in the central continent. Rudy tells his party that Lilia and Aisha are being held in the Chiron Kingdom. He is relieved that Rudyard and Eris didn't ask how he came about this information. Rudyard and Eris agree to help him get his family back. They make their way to the Chiron Kingdom. Rudy sits down, writes a letter, and has it delivered to the royal palace. He believes that the person he is writing to is Roxy. Last he heard from Roxy, she was in Chiron Kingdom. Rudy is walking through the city when he sees 2 guards holding Aisha. They collected a letter from her, but she managed to get it back. Rudy uses his power to trap the guards. With the type of power he has, the guards seem to know who he is. He is able to do magic without incantation. The guards call for backup, but Rudy manages to get him and his sister out of there. In a flashback scene, we get to find out that Lilia and her daughter were captured by Pax when they came looking for Roxy. Now in the present day, Rudy is still being held in the hole when the third prince of Chiron, Zenoba, comes to see him. He brings out a charm of Rudyard that he found inside Rudy's bag. He wants to know who made it, but Rudy lies. He doesn't know. Zenoba then brings out a charm of Roxy that Rudy made many years ago. Zenoba talks about the resemblance and reveals his desire to know who the artist is. Zenoba starts to point out all the details of the statue and why he is in love with the piece of art. While he is explaining all the details, Rudy notices that something is missing from the armpit. Zenoba realizes that the little detail that is missing has spoiled the beauty of the art. Unconsciously, Rudy says he can fix it. This gives Rudy up, and Zenoba is able to figure out that he is the artist that made the figurine. He starts begging Rudy to fix it, and he is ready to do anything. He tries to touch Rudy, but the barrier prevents him from doing so. He keeps demanding to know who put the barrier there. Meanwhile, some of the palace guards are meeting with Eris and Ruijerd. They have informed the duo that Rudy is being held in the palace dungeons. They want the duo to help rescue their families also. Ruijerd is confused, and he asks the guards to elaborate further. The soldiers tell the duo that Pax always holds their families hostage to make the guards cooperative. The duo agrees to help them. However, Eris will have to stay behind to look after Aisha. Ruijerd his third eye to guide him to where Rudy is so he doesn't need the guards to follow him. Back in the palace, Zabano has offered to do something about Pax so Rudy can be set free. He makes his way to Pax's room and drags him by the head to the dungeons. Meanwhile, Aisha and Eris are in the distance and they can see Zabano. Aisha reveals that Zabano is known as the Decapitator Prince and he is somewhat strong. Zabano holds Pax's head tight and threatens to break his head if he doesn't release Rudy. Pax tells the guards to fight Zabano if they care about their family. Eris tells them that they shouldn't listen to him because Ruijerd has already gone to save their families. The guards swear their loyalty to Zabano and Pax has no choice but to do as Zabano says. We get to find out how strong Zabano is when easily breaks his brother's arm. After everything has been settled, Rudy narrates how everything went down. It turns out that Ginger was the one that gave Zenoba the figurine because he knows that he is obsessed with the artist. This is the reason he was able to escape and the soldiers' families were also rescued. Later on, Lilia gives Rudy the pendant that Sylphie had made for him. She intended to send it to him, but was later unable to. Lilia is happy that Rudy is safe and she hugs him. Just then, Aisha runs over to ask Rudy if she can accompany him on his journey. She still doesn't know that Rudy is her half-brother. Rudy finds an easy way to refuse Aisha's proposal. He then gives her a head protector for her to hold on to. Aisha and Lilia go their separate ways while Rudy and his party go their own way too. As the cart moves farther away, Aisha shocks everyone when she calls Rudy her big brother. It turns out that she was aware, but she decided to play along too. Later on, Zenoba and Pax were exiled from the kingdom because of the incident that happened. They were sent abroad to study. Zenoba cannot get over his obsession with Rudy even when he was being exiled. As Rudy and his party continue on their journey to the kids' homeland, Eris trains harder every day. After one of their training sessions, Ruijerd commends Eris. He now considers her a strong warrior, who still has a lot of potential to even be stronger than him one day. They continue their journey through the snowy mountains. They come across some dragons flying in the sky. Ruijerd tells the kids that the dragons are very powerful and it will take the strongest of the 7 great powers to defeat a pack of them. The trio starts passing through a mountain tunnel. Suddenly, Eris and Ruijerd freeze as if they have seen a ghost. Rudy is surprised because he is trying to figure out what is happening. 2 figures suddenly appear in the distance, a man and a woman wearing a mask. As the man and woman walk past them, Ruijerd tells Eris and Rudy not to move a muscle. Out of nowhere, the ox carrying their loads gets frightened and jumps off the cliff. The man and woman stop immediately. The man calls out Ruijerd and Eris's name, and this shocks them. The man says he knows the duo, but he doesn't know who Rudy is. Ruijerd gets defensive, and he demands to know how the man knows his name. The man and woman say it doesn't matter, and begin to leave. Just then, Rudy stops and introduces himself. The man reveals that he has no idea who he is. Paul is supposed to have 2 daughters and no son. He says the man tells the trio that his name is Orsted. Orsted is surprised that Rudy can look him in the eyes unlike the other 2. Rudy asks if he knows about the mana calamity, but he says no. Rudy turns back and is about to start going when Orsted asks if he knows the pale guy. Rudy says yes, and immediately he says this. Orsted comes rushing over with a fierce attack. Ruijerd manages to block his initial attack, but he soon finds out that he has no match for Orsted. Ruijerd fights bravely, but Orsted knocks him out. Eris also tries to fight Orsted, but he easily knocks her to the wall too. Orsted incapacitates Rudy and tells him to give the pale guy a message as he dies. Orsted reveals that he is the dragon being, and he promises to kill the pale guy, also known as the man being. Rudy falls to the ground and starts to bleed from his mouth and nose. As Orsted walks away, Rudy manages to stand up and attacks Orsted with magical attacks. Orsted blocks off the attacks, but Rudy keeps attacking even though he is weak. Orsted is surprised at the amount of mana that Rudy has. He compares his power to Laplace's own. Orsted easily blocks all of Rudy's attacks, and he gets closer to him. He pushes his hand into Rudy's chest and leaves him to die. Eris starts to cry that Rudy is dying. Rudy meets himself in the dimension of the Pale Guy. The Pale Guy affirms that the dragon being is very powerful and he is even on his level. The Pale Guy says he couldn't have warned Rudy about him because he can't track Orsted's movements. He has a curse on him that prevents him from doing so. He also has 3 other curses with him. One of them makes every living creature afraid of him. This is the reason Rudyard and Eris were terrified of him. Rudy is probably not scared of him because he is not from this world. Rudyard also has a curse on him because of the spear. Laplace passed his curse to the spear and gave it to the Superd. The curse is slowly leaving Rudyard because he has shaved off his hair. The curse will soon dissipate as he continues to work hard. The Pale Guy further adds that Orsted is the most powerful among the 7 great beings. He is only ranked number 2, but he faces off with the technique being he will win. His power is so great that he can even destroy the world, but the curses on him are stopping him from doing that. Rudy believes that he is dead meat already, but the Pale Guy tells him that he is wrong. Rudy soon opens his eyes to see Eris above him. Eris is relieved to see him alive. Eris reveals that Orsted came back to cast a healing spell on him. The masked woman with Orsted said something to him that made him turn back to heal Rudy. Orsted calls the woman by her name, Nanahashi. Orsted also assures them that Rudyard will be fine. Eris is very happy that Rudy is alive, and she starts sobbing. Rudy hugs her because he is also glad that he is alive to still be with Eris. In the next scene, Rudy wakes up from a nightmare about Orsted. He finds Rudyard looking over him and Eris. He then tells Rudyard everything he knows about the Pale Guy. He also reveals that the curse on him will soon go away. People will soon start to feel very comfortable around Rudyard. Rudyard looks relieved after hearing this, and you can see the happiness on his face. Soon afterward, they arrive at Rudy's hometown. There is nothing left of the village. Everything and everyone is gone. He remembers all the memories he had in the village with his family. Once Rudyard sees that he has fulfilled his promise to get the duo back to their homeland, he reveals his intentions to go on another adventure. He kneels down and thanks Rudy for all his help. Because of him, people are no longer scared of him or the Superd. Eris bursts into tears because she will miss Rudyard so much. She doesn't want Rudyard to go, but he has no choice. Rudy tells Rudyard that he can keep the pendant he gave to him. This is the same pendant that Roxy gave to Rudy. Rudyard says his goodbyes and leaves. It is a painful goodbye for the trio. Eris and Rudy soon make it to Fidoa, and they find out that Eris's homeland is gone also. All that is left is a camp of tents that people are now living in. As they go through the camp, they see Ghislaine in one of the tents. They are shocked to see her, and this applies to Ghislaine also. They run into each other, and Ghislaine is glad to see that the duo is alive. One of the family's heads, Alphonse, is also with Ghislaine. The duo is taken into the camp to inform them of everything that happened while they were away. Eris's parents are dead. Soros was blamed for the mana calamity, and he was executed also. Eris is already prepared for this, so she doesn't seem very shocked. Alphonse then reveals that Pileman Nodos Greyrat has expressed his wishes to take Eris as his concubine. Ghislaine is angry with everything Alphonse is saying, but Eris tells her to calm down. After hearing all of these, Eris tells them to leave the room and leave her alone. Rudy gets out of the tent, and Ghislaine shows him the board where they have written the names of everyone who has gone missing. They also have a board for those that are already dead. Rudy checks the list to find out that his mother and Sylphiette are still missing. This is some sort of hope for Rudy, because they can still be found. Later that night, Rudy is in his tent when Eris enters, expresses her wish to sleep with Rudy. Rudy reminds her that he is not 15 yet, and they already said that they will only have anything together when he is 15. Eris tells Rudy that things have changed, and she wants him now. Rudy believes that Eris is just suffering from emotional weakness, but Eris assures him that she is not. She pushes Rudy to the bed. Slowly the duo makes out, and they both get to enjoy every second of the moment. The next morning, Rudy wakes up looking very happy and glad. He walks outside and takes a stretch. He comes back inside to find out that Eris is no longer there. She has cut her long hair and dropped it on the floor for Rudy to find. She also leaves a letter for Rudy that she has gone on a journey with Ghislaine. Rudy runs over to ask Alphonse. Alphonse tells Rudy that Eris has instructed him not to tell him where she is headed. Rudy starts walking away with tears in his eyes. He is now alone with one to call his friend or family. After picking himself up from his depressed state, Rudy begins his journey to the north. There is also a group of adventurers inside the carriage where he is sitting. One of them, Suzanne, tries talking to Rudy, but he is disconnected from reality, and he just ignores her. A girl of Rudy's age is also in the cart and appears to be an adventurer. She berates Suzanne for concerning herself with Rudy's issues. Susan tries telling the girl, Sarah, that she only wants to know if he is okay. Rudy finally speaks out and he tells Suzanne that he is traveling up north to look for his mother who got missing during the disaster. Susan then offers to tell Rudy about the north. She starts by telling Rudy that most countries in the north are poor. However, the three great magical nations in the north do well for themselves. The Kingdom of Renault is an expert in training mages. The Duchy of Neris produces excellent magical implements. The Duchy of Basharant specializes in arcane research. The carriage is on its way to the Basharant. In addition, the three nations have formed an alliance for the prosperity of magic. They soon arrive at their destination and Rudy gets an inn to stay. He still has strands of Eris's hair that he holds close to him. After this, he makes his way to the guild. He gives the attendant his party license and he asks her to officially disband it. The adventurers in the guild see him doing this, and they all assume that his party members died during a battle, leaving him as the only survivor. He checks the task board and he finds a job that he wishes to do. The attendant tries telling him that the job requires a party to carry out. Rudy doesn't seem to care about all of that or the risk associated with the job. Just then, Suzanne and her party members enter the building and she offers to assist Rudy on the job. She takes Rudy to meet the rest of the party members, but Sarah doesn't like the idea. Suzanne tells Rudy to join her party in the meantime. They are short of a hand, so Rudy will fit in perfectly. After explaining all the details, Suzanne tells Rudy where he is to meet them the next day. The following morning, Susan is surprised to find Rudy at the rendezvous. She commends him for coming early. The party sets out for the day job. On their way, each member starts to introduce themselves to Rudy. Susan says she is not the party leader, but she somewhat lays out the instructions. There is Timothy, and he is somewhat of a leader too. Mimer is the party's healer. There is also Patris. Sarah is the last to introduce herself, and she does so scornfully. It turns out that their task is to hunt down Luster Grizzly. Susan lays out the plan of engagement when they find the creature. They soon make it to the den of the white bears. Timothy starts by attacking them with long-range magical spells, and everything seems to be going on just fine. Just then, Rudy puts his ears to the floor, and he is able to deduce that they are about to be attacked by another wave of bears. The bears appear in the distance and fear grips everyone when they find out that the new wave is a bunch of black bears. The black bears have covered themselves in mud to avoid being affected by fire. They soon swarm the party and Rudy just stays there without having any idea of what to do. The rest of the party kept fighting with all their strength, and they managed to eliminate the bears. The party is already weak and exhausted when another wave of bears arrives. Rudy is finally able to pick himself up when he sees how hard the party members fought. They didn't give up, so he shouldn't. He faces the bear and creates a very powerful magical attack that eliminates all of the bears in one sweep. The party members are shocked about how powerful and talented Rudy is. After the dust settles, they start taking the furs of the bears. Surprisingly, Sarah comes to thank Rudy for saving them. The party gets back to the guild and drops all the fur they accumulated as proof. They also buy drinks for the adventurers. Rudy is happy when he is introduced to everyone in the guild, and they accept him with joy. That night, Rudy finally gets over his heartbreak. He decides to make himself proud and prove that he is still worth having the life he has. He burns Eris's hair strands that he has been keeping with him. A few months have gone by and Rudy has started building his reputation among the locals. He is popularly known by his nickname Quagmire. He hopes that his name gets spread far and wide till it gets to his mother wherever she is. Rudy makes his way to the guild where he takes a look at the available jobs. After finishing all the menial jobs he partook in, he makes his way home. He runs into Sarah, who invites him for a job. Rudy just finished working and he feels tired, but he accepts nonetheless. Rudy and Suzanne's party makes their way to the site of the task. They arrive at the Galgo ruins, which were built during the First Huan-Demon War. The architecture was used as a fortress. Their job at the ruins is to gather snowdrake scales that have fallen into the site. Inside the ruins, Rudy sees a statue of Kashirika. They are in the middle of picking the scales when the snowdrakes appear from every corner of the room. The party immediately begins to retreat, but Rudy is caught in the middle of the monsters. Surprisingly, the party turns back to help and protect him from the monsters. Suddenly, another adventurer shows up, and he appears to be skilled with the way he eliminates the snowdrakes. After all of the monsters have been defeated, Timothy approaches the adventurer and tries to introduce himself, but the adventurer punches him instead. The adventurer claims that Timothy and his party are trying to steal their prey. Their job is to exterminate snowdrakes in Ilbran Cave. Timothy hears this, and he understands where the problem came from. He explains to the aggressive adventurer that the Ilbran Cave is connected to the ruins that they are standing in. The snowdrakes must have moved in between the locations, and this is why he believes that the snowdrakes are yours alone. The adventurer acknowledges what Timothy is saying, but he still insists that Timothy's party can only get a small share of the kills. Timothy accepts this to prevent a further altercation. The party returns to town to celebrate a successful day. While they are busy having drinks, the adventurer from before enters the room also. He appears to be very drunk. He starts to trash talk Rudy about how he acts. He says Rudy just walks around like he is the only one with problems in their life. During his rant, we get to find out that his adventurer's name is Soldat. Everything Soldat is saying gets to Rudy, and Rudy is forced to apologize for his sulky behavior. Even with Rudy's apology, Soldat doesn't seem to care. Soon afterwards, Suzanne and her party members return from a task. She tells Rudy that Mimer and Sarah are missing. They were blinded by a blizzard and a herd of snow buffalo attacked them. Mimer is sure to be dead, but Sarah was separated from the group. They plan to return to the forest when the blizzard goes down to search for Sarah. After hearing this, Rudy gets his things and secretly leaves to search for Sarah. He uses his magic to clear the blizzard and create a clear path into the forest. He keeps thinking of what Soldat said, and he is determined to accomplish something by himself. Searching for Sarah will count as one. He soon arrives in the forest, and he finds Mimer's corpse. He continues his search for Sarah from there. He sees Sarah trapped in the trunk of a tree by a tree monster. He manages to get Sarah out of the tree's grasp and get her out of there safely. He takes her to a cave and he heals all of her injuries. The following morning, the duo gets ready to leave. Surprisingly, Sarah thanks Rudy for coming to save her. They return to town and Sarah's party is very happy to see her. They are shocked that Rudy went all alone to rescue her. They thank him for his help, and this brings a smile to Rudy's face. After this, Rudy starts to go on more jobs with Sarah's party. Sarah has also gotten very close to Rudy. One night, Sarah invites Rudy out. The duo visits a tavern together, and Sarah reveals that she feels safe anytime she is around Rudy. Rudy is happy to hear this, and he starts to contemplate whether it is time to forget the past and move on. Once they are done drinking, Sarah suggests that they go back to Rudy's place. Rudy wants to control himself, but he accepts. They arrive at his place, and Sarah gives him the go-ahead to sleep with him. They take off their clothes and are about to get down to business. When Rudy realizes that something is wrong with him, his manhood has refused to stand erect. He is surprised by this because this is the first time it will be happening. Sarah leaves angrily. Before leaving, she tells Rudy that she is not into him, and she just wanted him to sleep with her as a payment for saving her life. Rudy is infuriated, and he decides to visit the tavern again to drink himself to stupor. Just then, Soldat enters the room and he starts insulting Rudy. He continues mocking him until Rudy has had enough, and he punches him in the face. Rudy pushes him to the floor and continues punching him, but Soldat doesn't retaliate. As he does so, Rudy keeps talking about how sad he is, but he always tries to smile and hide his pain. Rudy finally stops and he tells Soldat to hit him. Soldat refuses and he accepts that Rudy definitely has it worse than he thought. Soldat tells him to stand up and continue drinking. He wants to hear everything while he does so. Rudy then tells Soldat that he is still suffering from the trauma of Eris leaving him, and because of this, his man-thing has refused to erect. Eris was the first person he would have something with, and she ditched him the following morning. Soldat assures Rudy that they will find a solution to his affliction, but he doesn't know how yet. Soldat takes Rudy to a pleasure house. Rudy meets with a pleasure girl, Elise. The girl pours him a drink, and after drinking it, the girl is ready to get down with him. Moments later, the duo comes out of the room and Rudy looks gloomy. He informs Soldat that he tried doing all sorts of stuff with Elise, but none of them worked. Elise then informs Soldat that she has an idea of what is happening to Rudy. He is scared of another girl turning on him and his body is reacting to this. Elise tells the duo that Rudy cannot rush relationships. His relationships will have to be nurtured if there is to be any success. Rudy continues drinking until he falls asleep. Soledad and Rudy finally wake up when the attendant comes to tell them that the tavern is ready to close. As they walk back home, Soledad tells Rudy that he needs to prepare himself for Sarah. He shouldn't try to rush things and he should just take his time. He advises him to find Sarah and try talking things out with her. Rudy is still suffering from a hangover and he just starts spilling nonsense. He talks about how no one can be stacked like Eris. He says everything Sarah has been doing looks childish to him. Meanwhile, Sarah is around them, but Rudy is backing her and he didn't realize this. Soledad tries to caution him, but it's too late and Sarah already heard everything. Sarah goes close to him with tears in her eyes and she slaps Rudy. She tells Rudy that she doesn't want to see him again and leaves. Her dagger falls down and she walks away and Rudy finds it. Soledad tells him to run after Sarah and explain himself, but Rudy is already too heartbroken to do so. He just falls down on his knees and he buries his head in his hands. Soledad realizes that Rudy is scared to go to Sarah. He then suggests that he follows him and his party. There is a huge labyrinth that has turned up in the Duchy of Neris. Soledad and his party are heading out later that day, and he wants Rudy to tag along. Rudy realizes that Soledad is a nicer person than he lets out. Rudy then accepts to follow him and his squad. Rudy joins Soledad's party on their adventures. He acts as the lookout to tell them the monsters that are approaching and the distance they are at. The party is attacked by a group of grizzlies, but they manage to eliminate them. Suddenly, a red dragon shows up and no one in the party seems to be a match for the flying monster. Even Soledad tells his men to retreat, but Rudy stays back and takes on the dragon all by himself. He eliminates the dragon without sustaining any injury. The party is shocked to see how amazing Rudy is. They take the dragon's carcass back to town and everyone keeps praising Rudy. Soledad tells him to consider joining his party officially, but Rudy reminds him that he will leave after making a name for himself. He wants to do this in order to find his mother. Rudy gets home that night and pays homage to Roxy's piece of clothing that he has in his room. As days go by, Rudy continues to work on his body and make himself better. He is at the tavern one day when Ani-Kun enters. She walks straight to where Rudy is and reveals her satisfaction about finally tracking him down. Rudy doesn't know who she is, and it is left for her to introduce herself. She then tells Rudy that she and Paul were once in the same adventurer's party. She also adds she knows Roxy. Paul hears Roxy's name and he is already excited. As the discussion continues, Ani-Kun sees the pendant around Rudy's neck and she demands to know where he got it. He reveals that his friend, Sylphiet, gave it to him. She is an elf, and so is Ani-Kun. Ani-Kun also has a look-alike of the pendant. Ani-Kun then tells Rudy that she has good news for him. Ani-Kun tells Rudy that they now know where Zenith is. Roxy has gone to team up with Paul, and they should be on their way to Rappa. Rudy cannot travel at the moment because it is almost winter. The journey to Rappa will take a year, so he has no choice but to stay where he is till after winter. Up next, Ani-Kun brings a letter for Rudy. The letter is from Ginas, the vice principal of the Rana University of Magic. Rudy is being invited to the university as a special student. Special students are excused from the tuition fee and lessons. They are free to use the library as they see fit. They want him to join the school and continue to improve his skills. Rudy realizes that his 2 years of hard work are finally paying off because he is being recognized by people and institutions. After this, Rudy asks Conrad about how the school system is run. He explains everything to him and says they are probably inviting him because he is able to cast spells without magic. Rudy starts to remember why he went to tutor Eris in the first place. It was all to help pay for his and Sylphiet's tuition fee. Ani-Kun then advises him to work on his skills rather than looking for his mother. He can trust his father and Roxy to bring back Zenith. Rudy is ready to pass up the invitation and look for his family instead. That night, Rudy finds himself in front of the pale guy again. He is able to convince Rudy to enroll in Magic University instead. He says Rudy will regret going to Rappa. Rudy will be able to investigate the teleportation disaster if he enrolls at the university. The pale guys add another incentive. He says Rudy's erectile dysfunction will get cured if he enrolls at the university. This is enough to change Rudy's mind, and he decides to follow the pale guy's advice. Rudy says goodbye to Soledad and his party, and he thanks them for all their help. It wasn't easy for them to part ways, but it was necessary. Soon afterward, Ani-Kun and Rudy arrive in Rano. Elena tells Rudy that she is willing to stay with him at the school. Rudy finds Genus, and the trio sits down for a conversation. Genus is pleased to see Rudy, and he is confident that Rudy is there to enroll. Rudy tells Genus that he wants to use the opportunity to make investigations and learn other things. Genus says Rudy will have to take a test before he can be enrolled. Rudy is taken to a hall where the students practice their magic. Genus is happy to have a silent caster with them. Silent casters are people who don't need indications to do magic, just like Rudy. Genus tells Rudy that he will have to participate in a mock battle with another silent caster, Fitz. Fitz is their best student when it comes to this. The battle begins and Rudy easily defeats him to everyone's surprise. To prevent Fitz from looking embarrassed, he quickly tells everyone there that Fitz intentionally lost at him. After this, Rudy is officially accepted into the school, and he is to stay in the school's dormitory. Rudy is free to do anything that he wants off campus as long as he attends the homeroom lecture once a month. Elenelise has also decided to be a student, and she had to find the shortest skirt to wear to make her look more attractive. Shortly afterward, the students gathered for their welcome speech. The speech is to be given by the second princess of Azura and the president of the university's student council, Ariel. Ariel urges the students to go about their learning no matter which race they are. Later on, Rudy visits his classroom. He is shocked when he sees Zenoba there. Zenoba is now a student at the university, and he still has not changed with the way he acts around Rudy. He calls Rudy his master and introduces him to his friend Linnea. Linnea is a beast person. She tells Rudy that her father is the war chief of the Dodoldia village. Rudy realizes that Linnea is Jai's daughter, whom he said was studying abroad. Another of Linnea's friends is Persena. He is introduced to another classmate who is a mage, Cliff. Cliff reveals that he knows who Rudy is. Eris told him about Rudy. Rudy hears Eris, and he immediately wants to know where he met her and how they got to meet. However, Zenoba interrupts their conversation to tell Rudy that they still have another classmate, but she is not in the class at the moment. After leaving the classroom, Rudy visits the library. He runs into Fitz and the duo engages in a nice conversation. He then tells Rudy where he can find books to read on teleportation magic. In the next scene, Rudy and Zenoba are having a discussion when a guy approaches them. He introduces himself as Luke Noto's Greyrat. Technically, he is Rudy's cousin. His job at the academy is to protect Ariel. Ariel's other bodyguard is Fitz. Later that day, Rudy is taking a pathway when female students suddenly surround him. They accuse him of being a pervert because a female underclothing fell on him. Fitz arrives and informs the mob that he is responsible for dropping the clothing. Rudy is still new at the school and doesn't know the rules yet. He is not aware that the pathway is only for females to take when it is late. Fitz manages to get Rudy out of trouble. After the mob has left, Rudy thanks Fitz for saving him. Fitz tells Rudy not to thank him because it was his fault in the first place. He was the one that dropped the undergarment. Nonetheless, Rudy still thanks him for his help because he sees Fitz as an amazing guy. Rudy is settling in at school, and he already has a daily cycle that he follows. He goes to class, practices his magic, teaches Zenoba how to make figurines, reads at the library, and retires to his dorm room. As time goes on, Fitz starts getting closer to Rudy. He also offers to research the teleportation disaster with Rudy. Fitz tells Rudy that someone he knows got missing during the disaster, but the said person has been found. Later on, Rudy decides to ask Fitz why he always wears sunglasses. He then tells Rudy that he has his reasons, but he can't reveal them for now. Fitz also sleeps at the girls' dorm because his job is to protect the princess. He has permission to do this, and he has no intention of doing anything that will hurt the princess. Fitz tells Rudy that he started learning magic from his master. His master is someone that he looks up to. Rudy says he would like to meet the said master one day, but Fitz says it might not be possible. Fitz smiles and Rudy's heart starts to race. He wonders why he is feeling this way around a boy. Nonetheless, Rudy is happy that Fitz, who is known as the man of mystery in the academy, is willing to help him. After their long conversation, Fitz leaves to run an errand for the princess. Up next, Zenoba tries using earth magic to create figurines, but he keeps failing. Rudy decides to teach him another method, the primitive method of carving from the ground up. Rudy makes a stone brick, and he starts to show Zenoba how to carve. However, this turned out to be another problem because Zenoba's strength causes him to crush the stones very easily. They tried using clay, but it didn't work either. The following day, Rudy tells Fitz about his troubles with Zenoba. Fitz then tells Rudy about a possible solution. Zenoba can get a slave to help him out concerning the figurines. Rudy realizes that Fitz just proposed a good idea, and he tells Fitz that he will relay the idea to Zenoba. They will visit the slave market together so that they can get a suitable slave. He asks if Fitz will be available to follow them, and Fitz accepts without hesitation. Soon afterward, the trio meets to take a trip to the slave market. Upon getting to the slave market, Fitz suggests that they find a young person. Since Zenoba will be teaching the slave how to cast magic, the slave will need to learn from an early age. Fitz reveals that the same technique helped him when his master was teaching him how to use silent cast magic. They find a merchant to put them through. The merchant brings out a list of slaves that he has, and he tells them that there is a 6-year-old dwarf girl that might fall into the category that they want. She can't speak human language, but she can read and write. Rudy asks the merchant to show them the girl because he is already developing a liking for her even without seeing her yet. They are taken to the cells where the slaves are being kept. The girl is brought out, and she appears to be malnourished. Rudy approaches her, and he starts speaking to her in Dwarven language. Rudy realizes that the girl has lost all hope, and she looks like someone who now longs for death. To clear things up, Rudy asks the girl if she would like to die or not. Rudy doesn't want to go against her wish, so he needed to ask first. Surprisingly, the girl replies and tells Rudy that she is not ready to die. This makes Rudy happy, and the girl is taken away. She is taken to a restaurant where she is fed properly. They ask her what her name is, but she doesn't have one yet. Dwarves don't name their children until they turn 7. The trio decides that it is up to them to give the girl a name. The trio agrees to call her Juliet. They return to the university, and Juliet is to start living with Zenoba. Rudy is tasked with teaching Juliet human language. This seems to be progress concerning Zenoba's figurine problem. Fitz explains how he spends his day. He wakes up in the morning and goes for a run until his legs can no longer carry him. He is doing this to know the layout of the city very well. The city of magic, Shuria, is large, and he wants to get familiar with it. After this, he attends boring lectures with the princess. They are always escorted by Luke, who is in charge of protecting the princess. Fitz finds out that Luke is from the same family as Rudy. He also wonders if Rudy will start chasing girls around even when he gets married. His father did it, so there is every possibility that he will also. Talking about Rudy, he has been on Fitz's mind lately. He doesn't know the type of relationship he wants with Rudy. It's been a month since Juliet arrived, and she has improved on her magic more than Rudy's expectations. She is even able to practice silent casting. Other slaves have markings and symbols to prevent them from escaping, but Juliet doesn't. Rudy wants her to feel safe and secure. This is the reason he has not branded her. One night, Zenoba is showing Juliet the Rudyard figurine in his possession, and Rudy asks him for the Roxy figurine in his possession. He lies that he didn't bring it from Sharon, but Rudy easily sees through him. Zenoba has no choice but to present the figurine to Rudy. He brings out a box, and Rudy is shocked to find out that the figurine is in pieces. Zenoba is already sweating because he knows how special Roxy is to Rudy. He doesn't play with anything concerning Roxy. Zenoba quickly confesses as to how the figurine got damaged. He revealed that Linnea and Persena challenged him to a duel when he was in his first year. They wagered something precious to them, and the figurine is what he wagered. He was defeated, and the duo broke the figurine apart. Rudy is surprised to find out that the Dodoldia girls will do such. Rudy then decides that he will teach them a lesson for breaking his hard work apart. Zenoba and Rudy find Linnea and Persena where they are having a discussion. With the boys' stance, the girls are able to figure out that the boys are there to fight. They are well aware that Zenoba is there for revenge. They mock him for bringing Rudy with him. Rudy annoys the girls and makes them come after him. He soon shows that he is not on their level as he easily displaces them. After the duo is incapacitated, he ties them down and takes them to his dorm room. Upon getting to his room, he initially gropes them to find out if his condition has been cured. However, he still remains the same, and his manhood doesn't even make the slightest move. He then tells the girls their offense. He brings out the shattered Roxy figurine. He tells them that he adores his master very much and doesn't joke with her. For them to have stooped so low and destroyed her figurine, they have made him mad. They can see the seriousness on his face, and they start begging immediately. The duo shifts the blame on each other. He doesn't know the punishment befitting for the duo yet. He reveals that their father once falsely accused him of a crime, and he was thrown in a prison cell with his bare body. He thinks of doing the same to the girls. The girls scream out in fear, and this just sounds like music to Rudy. As the discussion is ongoing, Rudy starts thinking of fixing the figurine again. He has mastered his skill more than before, and it should be easy for him to fix it and make it look new. The next day, Rudy tells Fitz that he has the girls locked in his room and he is thinking of the best punishment for them. Fitz is very interested to know if Rudy touched the girls, but he assured him that he didn't. An idea comes to Fitz on what to do to the girls. Fitz then accompanies Rudy home that day. They get home to find out that the duo have messed themselves up. They are sitting in their own pee and trash. Fitz and Rudy are forced to clean them up first. After they are cleaned up, the girls are asked to stand up so that they can hear their punishment. They have been humbled, and they have started calling Rudy their boss. Fitz brings out a paint tattoo, and he paints the shape of a mustache and beard on their faces to make them look funny. They are warned not to wash off the paint till the next day. Before leaving that night, the twins find out that Ghislaine is also Rudy's master. Ghislaine is their aunt, and that gives them some idea of how they should not mess with Rudy. After the departure of the girls, Fitz lays down on Rudy's bed to relax. He knows that Rudy is curious about his glasses, and he intentionally asks him if he wants to see his whole face. Rudy wastes no time in saying yes. Fitz tells him that he would have loved to show him, but he is under strict orders from the princess not to show anyone his face. One day, Rudy and the twins are having fun in class. Their play can be heard all over the class, and it is disturbing Cliff in particular. He gets frustrated and shouts at the trio to stop talking. He complains that their incessant talks cannot allow him to concentrate on what he is doing. Rudy apologizes and tells the girls to stop making noise. The girls listen to him immediately and keep their mouths shut. Later that day, Rudy sees 6 guys picking on Cliff. He interferes and the guys leave without even putting up a fight because they know exactly who he is. After the bullies are gone, Cliff initially acts arrogantly that he doesn't need Rudy's help. However, he changes up and thanks Rudy for his assistance. Rudy wonders why Cliff hates him in the first place. The following day, Cliff approaches Rudy and asks for his help. He reveals that he has a crush on a girl, and he needs Rudy's assistance concerning that. Rudy thinks Cliff will ask him to deliver a love letter or something close to that. Rudy is surprised when Cliff says the girl he is interested in is Elenolise. He was fighting the guys from yesterday because he heard them talking badly about Elenolise. They were saying Elenolise would spend the night with any boy in the school, and this was the reason he picked a fight with them. Unknown to him, the boys are actually telling the truth. Cliff tells Rudy that he is interested in dating Elenolise. He sees her as a very bold and good person. He wants Rudy to introduce him to Elenolise. After this, Rudy decides to ask for Fitz's help and advice concerning what Cliff told him. Rudy reveals that Elenolise is someone he cannot date. Fitz tells him to introduce Cliff to Elenolise. He is very sure that they have different opinions of her. Rudy might not see Elenolise as someone he likes, but Cliff might actually think differently. He should introduce them to each other and let them sort out themselves afterward. After the introduction, he no longer has any business with whatever they do. Fitz advises him to give Cliff the chance to express his feelings. Shortly afterward, Rudy takes Cliff to meet Elenolise. Cliff says he is fully prepared for any rejection that might come his way. Rudy introduces the duo to each other and Elenolise asks him why he has come to meet her. Cliff wastes no time in revealing that he likes Elenolise. He wants to know if Elenolise will consider a personal relationship with him. Upon hearing this, Elenolise drags Rudy to a corner and asks him why he has made the decision to bring Cliff to her. He is well aware that she can't stick to one man because of her curse. Rudy tells her to just tell Cliff that she is not ready to be with him and everything will be settled. Rudy then leaves to avoid listening in on their conversations. He is very sure that Elenolise will reject him. He leaves that day and doesn't bother to ask about the outcome of their meeting throughout the day. The following day, Rudy is shocked when he sees Cliff and Elenolise together as a couple. Elenolise reveals that she couldn't resist Cliff's proposal. Cliff also knows about Elenolise's curse, and he is willing to help her overcome the curse. Rudy has no option but to accept their decisions. He even watches as the duo lock lips. He cannot wait to be cured so he can make out with someone too. Up next, we get to find out that a duel is the only way to get the heart of a beastkin. Persenna and Linnea are princesses, which means they will have lots of suitors. It is the mating season and suitors are expected to show up. The duo writes to Rudy to inform him that they won't be leaving their dorm. They say the rest is up to Rudy. Rudy doesn't know what they mean by everything is up to him until he receives a challenge from someone. The person reveals that Persenna says he is the chief of her pack. He needs to defeat Rudy to have a chance with Persenna. Rudy doesn't want to accept the challenge, but the man forces him. Rudy easily defeats him and goes on his own way. Later on, Rudy tells Fitz that he has a big challenge on his hands. It turns out that everyone who is interested in marrying Persena and Linnea would have to beat him. Soon afterward, Rudy gets to the challenging ground to find out that a demon man has defeated all those who are waiting to fight him. The demon man says his fiancé is Kashirika, the emperor of the demon world. He reveals that his fiancé spoke well about Rudy and called him a marvel. He introduces himself as the demon king Batagati. Before Rudy knows what is happening, he has been challenged to a duel by the demon king. While waiting for the challenge to start, the demon king reveals that Rudy has much mana that can even rival that of Laplace. Rudy asks the demon king if he knows the pale, divine being who usually appears in his dreams, but he says no. Shortly afterward, Fitz arrives with Rudy's staff so the challenge can begin. Before the duel begins, Rudy begs Batagati to spare his life even if he loses. Batagati is surprised that Rudy doesn't even believe in his own strength. Batagati then makes Rudy an offer. He gives Rudy the chance to hit him with his best attack. If he manages to wound him, Rudy wins. However, Batagati will be considered the winner if Rudy's blow doesn't injure Batagati. Rudy accepts the offer, and he gently cooks up a powerful spell and attacks Batagati with it. After the resulting explosion, Batagati is injured. Rudy is considered the winner. However, Batagati makes sure to punch Rudy in the mouth before concluding the duel. Fitz helps Rudy to take care of his swollen mouth afterward. The following day, Batagati shows up in a school uniform. Apparently, he has enrolled in the school. The shock and surprise on Rudy's is very glaring. Up next, we see Fitz having a discussion with the princess and Luke. Luke cannot believe that Fitz has not revealed to Rudy that he is the same person as Sulfiat. She is scared that Rudy might have forgotten who she is. Luke sees her as a hopeless person. The princess then tells her that she is now free to do whatever she wants with the Fitz name. She is free to continue using it, and she is free to discontinue its use. Continuing with his investigation of the mass teleportation, Rudy asks Fitz if he knows anyone who is good at summoning or knows about summoning magic. Fitz then tells him about a person who is always by herself. He can go and see her to ask about summoning. Rudy gets to the room of the said person. He opens the door and he starts sweating immediately. He sets his eyes on the girl wearing a mask. He remembers her from somewhere. It dawns on him that the girl is Nanahashi. Nanahashi is Orsted's partner, and she was with him the day Orsted almost killed him. Rudy gets very scared and he runs out of the room. He keeps gasping for breath until he passes out. He later wakes up with Fitz's hand stroking his hair. He turns around to find out that Nanahashi is also in the room. Nanahashi assures him that she means him no harm. She was even the one who saved him when Orsted wanted to kill him. She reveals that Orsted has no plan of killing him for now. However, it depends on his actions and the things he does. Nanahashi then says she has 3 questions to ask him, and he must answer truthfully. She brings out a note, and she shows Rudy. There are 2 names written in the Japanese language on the note. There is Shinohara Akido, and there is Kuroki Seiji. She asks him what language the names are written in. She asks him if she recognizes the name. Finally, she asks him to tell her who he is between the 2 names. Rudy says he recognizes the language, but he doesn't know who the 2 people on the notes are. Nanahashi believes him, and she reveals that she is also from Japan. She takes off her mask to reveal her face. She is the same girl who Rudy was trying to save when he got knocked by a truck and died. She is very happy to see Rudy, and she assures Rudy that he has nothing to worry about. She is on his side, she says. She is also glad that she wasn't the only one who got sent to this world. She tells Rudy that they should work together to get back to Japan, but Rudy says he has no desire to return. Rudy reveals that he was born in this world after he died in Japan, whereas Nanahashi was just walking home from school one day when she got teleported into this world. Rudy was born, but Nanahashi was teleported directly. She found herself in the Azura Kingdom. Orsted took her under his protection and trained her. He took her around the world, and there was always constant fighting. Orsted has lots of enemies. The day he fought Rudy, Nanahashi noticed that something was different about him, and she asked Orsted to bring Rudy back to life. She reveals that Orsted has a personal beef with the pale divine being. Nanahashi further adds that she and Orsted have been traveling around looking for the 2 guys on the note. She reveals that it is actually said that she was summoned into this world by someone. She also needs to follow certain rules to stop her from getting erased. She also does not age, but she has no mana to fight Rudy even if she wants to. She doesn't age, but she has no idea if she is immortal. She tells Rudy all of her journey, and she then asks him if he now trusts her a little. Rudy says he doesn't have anything that he is missing in Japan, and that's the reason he doesn't want to go back. Nanahashi then offers Rudy a deal. He helps her with mana, and she tells him everything she knows. Rudy thinks about the offer, and he accepts. Nanahashi tells Rudy that he cannot back out of the deal later. Nanahashi then tells Rudy that the mass teleportation happened right after she got summoned into this world. In some sense, she must have caused the mass teleportation disaster. Fitz hears this, and he just attacks Nanahashi, but she blocks his attacks. He blames her for everything she has gone through. Rudy calms her down and reveals that she was also a victim. She didn't choose to come to this world. Fitz didn't know this because Rudy and Nanahashi had been communicating in Japanese. She apologizes for attacking Nanahashi out of the blue. Nanahashi tells the duo that she is still working on what caused the teleportation. For that, she needs a lot of mana. This is the reason she needs Rudy. Rudy leaves by telling Nanahashi that he needs to think over what they just discussed. After this, Rudy and Fitz walk back home together. Later on, we see Fitz wishing he still had the courage to approach Rudy and tell him who he is. He wants to rekindle the relationship that they have together, but he has no idea how to go through with it. It has been almost a year that Rudy has been in the academy. He is now 16 years old. He is training under Batagati to get stronger. Batagati asks him why he wants to get stronger, but Rudy has no idea why. Rudy is frustrated, and he is forced to ask Batagati if he knows the cure for impotence. Batagati says he has no idea what Rudy can do to his condition. The students have been scared of Rudy since his fight with Batagati. They had no idea that he was very strong. While in class, Cliff asks Rudy if he has any clue about curses, but he says no. He has been meaning to know more about curses since he and Linnaeus have been together. Cliff starts thinking of a way to transfer curses from someone into an object just like Laplace did. After class, Rudy goes to the dining hall. He can clearly hear the students talking about him. They keep talking about how he defeated Batagati. After this, Rudy goes to Nanahashi's room for practice. He is practicing summoning magic with her. Nanahashi draws circles while Rudy pours mana into them to try and summon something. He summoned a feather and he asked Nanahashi if she considered that a success, but she said no. Nanahashi is hellbent on trying to summon someone from their world. She is trying different and several experiments to find out if she is really the cause of the teleportation. This is the reason she needs the summoning to work. She wants to know if it will cause any observable event. Nanahashi promises to teach Rudy about summoning if their experiment turns out to be successful. Rudy will end up with all the results of the experiments when Nanahashi returns to their world. She tells him not to worry himself and just focus on the experiment. Nanahashi gives Rudy a book to research if he is really desperate. With the regular visits to Nanahashi's room, Rudy has not been able to visit the library. This has also stopped him from seeing Fitz. One day, he receives a letter from Soldat. He tells Rudy that he is in Sharia, and he can come over to check on him. Rudy meets with Soldat and the party members in a tavern. Elinelise and Cliff also accompany Rudy to the tavern to meet up with Soldat. Soldat is surprised to see Elinelise with the boy. When Rudy is ready to leave, Cliff and Elinelise say they will follow the party for some adventuring time. She wants to show Cliff how adventurers do their thing. On his way back to school, he runs into Luke and Fitz buying things at the market. He decides to say hello to them. He tries approaching Fitz, but Luke stops him. Rudy tries talking to Fitz, but he gets no reply from him. Luke tells him that Fitz is not in a good mood to talk. He suggests that Rudy leaves. Rudy is hurt, but he has no chance but to just leave. Rudy doesn't have any idea why Fitz has refused to talk to him. He doesn't remember doing anything bad to him. Rudy returns to school, but he is moody. He needs someone to talk to about what he is feeling. He thinks about the people he knows and considers his options. He knows that Sonoba is not around because he has taken Julie out for an event. Nanahashi is very busy at the moment. Linnea and Persena will just make fun of him. He decides to visit the library and use a book to get over his sorrow. He enters the library, and he is surprised to find Fitz there. He asks him why he ignored him earlier. Fitz apologizes and says he was on duty, and he doesn't talk when he is on duty. Rudy argues that he didn't see the princess with him. Fitz replies and says Ariel was in a shop nearby. Rudy apologizes for talking to him at such an inappropriate time. However, Rudy has some ideas. He can put it together that who he actually saw was Princess Ariel. She was disguised as Fitz, and talking with Rudy would have blown her cover. He is relieved that Fitz doesn't hate him or anything like that. As time goes on, Rudy finds out that he is falling in love with Fitz. He is worried that he is falling in love with a man. He gets desperate and he goes to one of their professors, Genus. He needs to ask about Fitz. Genus cannot talk to him about Fitz because he has been ordered not to do so. He leaves in disappointment. He wonders if he would ask Fitz out if he turns out to be a woman. Later on, he's in the library when Fitz shows up. While they are talking, Rudy trips and Fitz falls on him. Rudy is able to feel his body and he deduces that Fitz is a woman. Fitz quickly runs away before anything else. After she is gone, Rudy discovers that his man-thing stood up at that moment. Rudy decides that he will continue to treat Fitz like a man so as to not make her uncomfortable. He is also glad that he has found a solution to his manhood problem. However, he needs to take things slow. Rudy wakes up thinking about Fitz all night. He is walking in the walkway when he runs into Luke. Luke says they need to talk about Fitz. Rudy immediately assumes that Luke wants to talk about Fitz's identity and gender. He quickly tells Luke that he has no intention of telling anyone about Fitz. He also doesn't want any trouble for Fitz. He runs away before Luke can say anything else. Later on, Sylphiet meets with Luke and Ariel. Ariel respects Rudy for his decision to keep Fitz's secret. She then urges Sylphiet to reveal her true identity to Rudy. Ariel says they have been over this for months, and it would be nice to have Rudy on their side. Sylphiet needs to overcome her fears and get Rudy on their side. She's scared that Rudy might not remember who she is. Ariel advises her to simply introduce herself as the Sylphiet whom he grew up with in Buena. She can also make use of a memory that she is sure Rudy will remember. They need to come up with a plan to tell Rudy who Sylphiet is. Sylphiet reveals that she wants an intimate relationship with Rudy, and this is the reason she wants to be with him. Ariel then warns Sylphiet that she should go according to plan and also be ready to tell Rudy who she is. Failure to do so when she is supposed to will bring about a consequence. If Sylphiet does not tell Rudy who she is when she is supposed to, Ariel will forbid her from seeing him again. Sylphiet says she is ready to face her fears. Later on, Fitz finds Rudy in the dining room. He asks him to come with him because he has something sensitive to discuss with him. Rudy wastes no time in following him. Before leaving, Rudy tells Zenoba to go ahead with what they have planned. He then tells Rudy that he has a favor to ask of him. He wants Rudy to accompany him into the forest to get a certain and rare flower. Rudy accepts the job offer. As they walk through the snowy forest, Fitz talks about Rudy's staff. Rudy reveals that the staff was given to him by a noblewoman she tortured some years back. Fitz asks to hold the staff because he has always wanted to hold a big staff. Fitz takes a step back so he can use a spell that will bring rain. Rudy tries to stop it, but he fails. He doesn't know that Fitz is behind everything. Fitz is glad that everything is going according to plan. He had intentionally collected the staff from Rudy to prevent him from using it. Since it is raining, Rudy suggests that they find a cave and take shelter in it. They soon find a cave to stay in. Rudy is able to figure out that the rain came so suddenly. He knows that someone might have used magic. He can deduce that Fitz also looks tense. Rudy takes off his clothes and dries them. He then tells Fitz that an elf girl he once knew told him that showing bearskins is a taboo among elf. Because of this, he will face the opposite direction while he uses magic to dry his clothes. Rudy turns around and waits for Fitz to dry his clothes, but he just sits down there with tears in his eyes. Rudy plans to leave the cave so Fitz can have some privacy, but he stops him. Rudy reminds him that he can catch a cold if he leaves the clothes on. Fitz says he is aware of that, but he doesn't want Rudy to leave. He doesn't want to use magic to dry his clothes either. He then suggests that Rudy undresses him. Before undressing him, Rudy reveals that he already knows that Fitz is a woman. Fitz says she doesn't care and tells Rudy to go ahead. He starts to undress her. This brings back the memories he had when he was 5 or 6 years old. The night he accidentally undressed Sylphiet because he thought Sylphiet was a boy. After taking off her clothes, he then takes off her glasses. He looks into her eyes and asks if she is Sylphiet. She immediately says yes and hugs Rudy. She starts crying and says it is a relief that she finally said it. She confesses her love to Rudy. She reveals that she has always loved him, and she even loves him more now. She begs Rudy never to leave her again. Rudy wonders how he has failed to recognize her all this time. He figures out that Fitz and Sylphiet have different personalities. Sylphiet has always been a crybaby who stays around him always. However, Fitz is a person who is cool-headed and looks out for people. This is the reason he has not been able to recognize her. He knows he needs to confess his love too. He doesn't want to lose everything he has now and starts regretting it later. He opens his mouth to tell Sylphiette that he loves her too. He drags her close and pecks her on the lips. He lays her on the floor so that they can get intimate. He asks if this is Sylphiette's first time, and she says yes. Suddenly, his man thing comes down again. Rudy bows down to Sylphiette and apologizes. He reveals that he has been that way for 3 years now. The impotence is mentally related, he says. Sylphiette tells him to stop apologizing. She then asks him to throw away all the formal greetings. She wants Rudy to talk to her as her lover now. Rudy then asks Sylphiette why she disguised herself as a boy. She then revealed that she had always wanted to be strong since the day Paul sent him away. She got angry and attacked Paul, but she wasn't strong enough. Since then, she has improved herself so that she can be worthy of Rudy. She reveals that she got teleported to the royal palace when the disaster happened. That was where she met Luke and the princess. She was very happy when she saw Rudy's name among the names of potential students. As the duo walk back to the academy, Rudy knows that his man thing is getting better, and it is all thanks to Sylphiette. They get to the academy, and they go their separate ways. Sylphiette wishes that she had medicine for Rudy's condition. Sylphiette then tells Luke and Ariel the result of his trip with Rudy. Upon hearing that Rudy is impotent, Luke says he has something for him. He asks if Sylphiette wants it, and she says yes. He then excuses himself from the room. Moments later, Luke returns with an aphrodisiac. He tells Sylphiette that the potion is very strong, and it is very expensive. He bought it back in Fitoa, and he had the intention of selling it later. However, he is giving it to Sylphiette, free of charge. Sylphiette has been a great help to him, so it is normal for him to repay her kindness. He says the potion will restore Rudy's vigor and desire. Ariel also gives Sylphiette 2 gold coins as a goodbye gift. She wishes her good fortune on her next adventure. Later that night, Sylphiette wears new underwear and also takes the potion with her. She then visits Rudy. Rudy is shocked when he hears that Sylphiette has come to stay the night with him. They sit down by the fire, and Sylphiette pours the 2 of them a drink. The duo starts to talk and reminisce about the good times they had in Buena, all the memories they made while in the village. She gives Rudy the potion to drink. She expects the potion to work immediately. She also drinks out of the potion. Shortly afterward, the duo starts to feel the effect of the potion. They get close to each other, and they find it difficult to resist each other. Sylphiette tells Rudy to dig in, and this sends him over the moon. He lays her on the bed and the screen goes dark. Rudy wakes up the next morning to find out that Sylphiette is gone. He observes the bed to find out that there is tomato sauce on it. He is worried about Sylphiette because he knows that she is on duty. He is also scared that Sylphiette has abandoned him. Just then, Sylphiette shows up. She tells Rudy that she went to thank the princess and Luke for their help. She is still saying this when Rudy shuts her up by hugging her. He starts to cry and Sylphiette assures him that she's there with him. Rudy thanks her and says he is finally cured. Later on, Rudy meets with the princess. He thanks her for her help and he asks if there is anything he can do to return the favor. Luke tells him not to get involved in matters that concern nobles. Rudy assures them that he has not been the type to interfere in political matters. However, he will be forced to intervene if anyone close to him gets caught in such political matters. Rudy tells the trio that he has plans to reunite his family that was scattered during the disaster. The princess then asks him about his plans for Sylphiette. He reveals that he is going to marry Sylphiette. This gladdens the trio. The princess tells Sylphiette that there is no need for her to dress like a boy again. She collects her disguise so she can finally show her true self. The princess tells Rudy that he is free to use her reputation and influence during his journey, and she will do the same too.